Three, two, one. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Taylor Talks podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Taylor, and I'm delighted to say that I've got one of the best coaches in Super League with us at the moment. He's coached at St Helens, Huddersfield, and has recently been head coach at Leigh and Widnes before making a move to Hull to become assistant coach at Hull FC and also head the reserves. I'm delighted to say that I've got Kieron Purtill joining us on the show. Kieron, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I've got to ask, first of all, how's lockdown been for yourself? Obviously, the situation at Hull, you've been in caretaker charge with Andy Lass, so how has that been for yourself in lockdown?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, I've grown a black and white beard. That's been coming along nicely in lockdown. It's been a bit strange for us, really, because obviously Lee Radford left after the incident on Sky, and since then in lockdown, we only really had one session as a coaching staff to get on the field with the boys. So we had one training session, then we went into lockdown. So it's been a bit of a strange period for us. We've got lots to work on and lots of ideas to implement, but we've not really had any time to put it in. Like everyone else in the world, we've been doing things on Zoom and keeping fit and chatting to people, but you can't replicate getting out on a field and drilling things and going through your process. And that's something we're really looking forward to getting back to being able to do.
For a coach, how important is it that you trust your players to keep on with the high standards and work that they're maintaining, albeit in difficult circumstances like the lockdown?
Yeah, it's very important. We're quite privileged that we have a very good group of players. I'd imagine every club's the same. 99.9% of the players will do everything that they can to, maintain the fitness and do everything possible to come back in the best condition. And you'll always have that slight percentage who will be up and down with little things, but that's life. But the Hull FC players have been working really hard. They've been reporting some scores back. We put some little tests out for them there, and ultimately it's in their best interest to make sure they maintain the physical condition and make sure they come back in the right shape to push the claims for a spot. Particularly with a new coaching team as well, it's a fresh start for everyone. So the slate's been wiped clean and everyone's ready to go.
And as well, we mentioned then you were coaching the reserves as well. I mean, how frustrating is it that you've got this kind of role being given to you and then 6 weeks later when the season starts, but it's been taken away and now you're back to square one, really not sure on what's happening when you go back?
Yeah, it's disappointing. Even with the reserves at the beginning of the year, with the weather, it affected quite a few games and it was a bit stop-start. And I think the first year of that we were always going to have a little bit of that, trying to get the reserves up and going again and make it a meaningful competition. The games we played, you could see, the purpose, what we were trying to achieve out of those games, and young players getting some game time and some of the senior guys coming back. So it was starting to show it, why it was brought back for that pathway. But now we've gone into lockdown, and the talk of potentially not playing again this year with reserves, and then potentially that competition getting knocked on the head altogether next year will be disappointing. But I understand why from a financial point of view. Not just from rugby league. I think every business, every household suffered through this COVID. What's been going on, and money's got to be clawed back somewhere. And it looks unfortunate that the reserves is going to be one thing that's going to be hit by it.
Have you had any discussions with the hires up at Hull about what will be happening in future, about when we know when you'll be going back to training and things?
Yeah, we have constant staff meetings every week. The hard thing is there's no answers coming from anywhere at the moment, and I think there's a little bit of frustration kicking in with coaching staff, players and fans that they're seeing other sports getting back on board. You're seeing football playing behind closed doors. The NRL in Australia is playing, and the players are getting itchy and everyone wants to get back on the field, but there's certain things we still have to hit off the field to make sure we're back, to make sure everyone's safe and the sport survives as well. There's some financial implications there. But I think everyone's working hard to try and get the fixtures in place first of all. When we get a definite date that the fixtures will start playing, then we can work back from that, from a training point of view, and get the boys back into training. Whichever ways that is, whether it's a small group first of all, and then eventually go into full training and full groups. I think we'll all be in the same boat. We'll have a couple of weeks, but everyone's itching to get back on the field.
And personally, how has it been lockdown for yourself, spending time with the family? Have you been doing much homeschooling while you've been off?
Yeah, it's been a different experience. My wife's been working full time, so the first few weeks she was in work full time, and then probably over the last 6 weeks, 7 weeks, she's been splitting a couple of days in work and a couple of days off. For myself, the first couple of weeks we're doing a lot on the laptops, catching up on the rugby, probably doing a little bit of scouting on some players we were looking at for next year. And then after 2 weeks you've done that, there's not a great deal to do. You start watching it, and then I've been challenged by the kids on a daily basis with the homeschooling. One's taken to it really well. He's doing exceptional, and the other one's been a little bit challenging to keep his interest in there. He really likes school, and he's missing school, and he wants to get back to it. So that bit's been different for me. And then from a personal point of view, I've tried to just keep myself busy fitness-wise, just exercise, bike, and running as much as I can to to get out of the house a little bit where I can and keep physically and mentally fit. And then I've started a bit of a project in the back garden that's been keeping me busy. I've basically dismantled my back garden and rebuilding it from scratch. So I've managed to keep myself busy and keep myself entertained so far.
And how important has it been? Obviously, you've had a distinguished career in rugby league. How important has it been to spend more time with the family and not travel, think about games to it every week?
Yeah, it's been really good. I've been able to spend a bit more, particularly with the oldest son, doing a little bit more training with him on his own rugby, which when I'm full time, in my job, it's hard to find that time sometimes, particularly when he's playing and training at his club as well. So having him at home, we've done a little bit ourselves, and then obviously the transition I've had this year going over to Hull, it's been different for the family. Spend a couple of days a week over in Hull, and when I go, I travel early in the morning, and when I get back, sometimes it's late at night. So we were adjusting to that, and I think we just found our feet and our routine with that before COVID and the lockdown happened, and then all of a sudden you're thrown back in and you're back in your house full time. So yeah, it's been a period of adjustment, but I've enjoyed it. But I like routine, and I like coaching rugby and being involved in it, and I'm missing it like everyone else is, and I want to get back involved there and get on the field.
I've got to ask, well, you mentioned about the sports bit started up behind closed doors. What's been your thoughts on the standard of rugby that we've seen in the NRL so far? There's been some good games, haven't there, considering the layoff that's been?
Yeah, there has. This morning's game, the Roosters and Para, I just finished watching that. That was an exceptional game. Both those teams are going really well. I thought the first week, everyone played well. It was a really good round. Probably a lot of emotion coming back out of lockdown, and everyone pumped up, ready to go. And then, week 2 and 3, I think you're seeing a bit of reality in, and some clubs have probably worked out the new rules a little bit better than others, and some of the rosters are a little bit better. And I think that's where you've seen some of the score lines blown out. But I think, I was having a discussion the other day. One of the major differences, I think, with the NRL is when teams do go behind, they don't give in. They keep coming back. They saw the game again this morning, the Cowboys and Tigers. The Cowboys were completely out of it, and then with 15 minutes to go, they had a little bit of a glimmer of hope and a chance to get back into the game. So yeah, I've really enjoyed it. It's been good. It's been high quality, and it'll be interesting to see what rules the Super League adapt from the NRL when we join back as well.
I've got to ask about rules. What do you think of the new set restart rule? Do you think that'd be good, as an attacking coach? Do you think that'd be good for an attacking team to have if it comes back into Super League?
Yeah, it's a rule I like. It'll speed the game up. From an attacking point of view, it keeps the momentum going. It keeps the flow going. The way to possession can really change on you pretty quick. But I suppose the difficult thing bringing it in mid-season is if that's going to be a permanent rule, your recruitment would probably be slightly different. In your middle people, particularly defensively, and what you've got there, you're probably going to need a bit more of a mobile pack and a bit quicker pack. So it'll be interesting if it comes in, how the teams over here adapt to it. Like we said before, I think some of the teams in the NRL have adapted pretty quick, and some are struggling, and that might be down just to simply the recruitment they've had and the players on the roster. So personally, yeah, I like the rule. Bring it in, it'll exciting. Everyone likes seeing tries scored, and if it speeds the game up and makes it more entertaining, then I'm all for it.
So before we go into depth about your time at Hull so far, we'll go right back to the start. So what was life like for you growing up? Was rugby always something that you wanted to do even as a young child?
Yeah, I don't know. It was one of those things that kind of fell in when I was about the age of 5. I think I started playing. I had a cousin, Craig Rogers, who he played rugby. He played at Wigan and played at Leigh. And then I had another cousin called Sheldon Hannon who was the same age as me. And one day he just said, "Do you fancy coming down training?" We went training at what was called Hindley Giants at the time. It was a new club, what was just starting off, now known as Hindley RLFC. And started there at the age of 5. Stayed there for a couple of years, and just kind of grew into the sport and just found a niche and something I liked. And then, from the age of 5, just kept playing through and moved around a couple of clubs and enjoyed it and probably got the bug. But from that side of it, the family was, I was brought up, my dad worked, or my granddad had a working firm. So my dad still farms to this day, does that, splits it with building. So as a young child, my life was probably split between playing rugby and being on the farm and working. And, I think both things have taught me, good things in life and probably shaped the character of who I am today.
So you just mentioned, Ben, about your dad working on the farm. I mean, obviously when you see your friends and all that, how different is it then? So like when you go to their houses, Ben, you probably invite them around and they see the farm.
Yeah, it was different. From a rugby point of view, especially when I was a lot younger. We used to play Saturdays or Sundays, or play Saturday and Sunday sometimes, as it was back then. Used to play for town team on a Saturday morning, then I'd go and play football maybe straight after that, and then we'd play rugby on a Sunday. But all the rest of the guys would play rugby, and then they'd be like, right, we're meeting up, and we're going out on our bikes, we're going to the park. And my role then was, I can't do that. I've got to go to the farm and go and work on land. So I'd play rugby in the morning, and then go and work on the farm all afternoon, and then the day after do exactly the same again. So that was a bit different, but it kept you grounded, and it probably taught you a lot of good morals and good work ethic in there. And then we had some strange times as well where we lived. The farm was in West Orton. At the time we lived in the Green, and just normal house. And particularly through lambing time, we'd go first thing in the morning. So my dad would go sometimes at 5 o'clock. If I were at school, I'd go with him, and you do whatever you was doing during the day, and then at night time you'd go back about 10 o'clock at night, and then you'd stay till whatever time you were needed at the farm. Sometimes that might be an hour, sometimes that might be in the early hours, and then like farming life is, you'd have sheep that won't take to the lambs, or the mums would pass away, and you were left with an orphan lamb. So we used to bring them home, and we start bottle feeding them and breed them, and the people would be walking past the house, and they'd be like sheep running around in the front garden, and they'd be looking at it, and then a few weeks later they'd come past and they'd ask, "Oh, where's the lambs gone?" And we're like, "Oh yeah, they've gone to the butchers now, and they've moved on." So we used to get a few strange looks and a little bit different, but it was all good fun growing up.
And how much did, obviously, playing rugby and working on the farm, how much did that help build your character to what you produced in your coaching career?
Yeah, I think when you look back, obviously influences around you shape the character and the person that you are. And I look at a lot of the family. So particularly all my dad's family, we're all in the farming business, and as you know, it's a tough business to be in. It's long hours, and my dad did that. He also worked as well, building. He had a building company, so he'd be on site as well. So it was farm in the morning, then go to building site, do that, then back to the farm. And then he coached football as well. My dad used to play football and was a football coach, so he used to fit that in as well, around everything else he was doing, as well as having a family, with 3 children and a wife. So yeah, you learn to work hard and motivate yourself, and probably that character's come through as you get older. You don't realise growing up, but it's ingrained in you, and that ability and that mentality just to work hard and be honest and graft. I think certainly that's within me and part of my character, not just as a person but as a coach as well.
And you mentioned when your dad playing football, coached football as well. So was you always a fan of football and rugby growing up as well? Were they your 2 main sports that you followed when you was a young child?
Yeah, they were the only sports really. Particularly, I went to high school in Cardinal Newman in Hindley, and it's closed down now. And predominantly that's what all we were with. It was rugby and football. And we used to laugh. So the PE kit back then was a red and white rugby shirt. So you could have a red and white plain shirt, or I grew up supporting Wigan, so I had a Wigan shirt, and we had white cotton rugby shorts and white socks, and that was our kit for everything. So when we played football, we played in a rugby kit. When we did athletics, we ran in the rugby kit. When we played cricket, we played it in a rugby kit. And I always remember at school going to one of the athletic meetings at Robin Park. We turned up and everyone's in the vests and the running shorts and the spikes, and all the full squad we took were full in rugby shirts, big thick cotton rugby shirts, cotton shorts and trainers, and it was a sweltering hot day, and we didn't win many races that day.
So you mentioned then you was a Wigan fan growing up at rugby. And what was your earliest memories of watching Wigan and supporting Wigan?
Yeah, I think me other grandma and granddad, they lived in Ince, and when I from the rugby point of view, I left Hindley at the age of 8 and went to Ince St Williams, and that was just where my grandma lived was a short walk to Central Park. So we, on the odd occasions, we used to go on Sunday. We used to go over to Wigan and walk over with my granddad, and I think that was a childhood memory, was walking up to Central Park. And in those days, there used to be thousands of people walking to the ground to watch the rugby and calling in the shops and getting some sweets on the way. But I think from a young point of view, the best memory and the one what really sticks in my mind is the World Club Challenge when they beat Manly. I remember being sat on the wall as you were allowed to do in those days at Central Park as a young child, and the crowd, I think they said on the day there was about 30,000 there. There must have been 50,000. I've never seen the place as full in my life. There must have been 5,000 stood on the bridge watching it in the corner like they used to do there, and it was a fantastic occasion and a memory that's always stuck with me.
And you mentioned then Central Park, of course, Wigan's old ground before we moved to what is now the DW. But did you have a particular fond memory as well as Manly of Central Park? Do you always feel that these older grounds had a more close feel than we do with the modern stadiums?
Yeah, I think a lot of the grounds were always built a little bit closer, and the fans were allowed to get a bit closer. As a young kid in those days, you used to sit on the wall, which you couldn't get any closer as a spectator. And as soon as the whistle was blowing, you were allowed to run on the field and go to your favourite player. And people used to wear sock ties to keep the socks up, and you used to go and ask your player for his tie ups, and then you used to keep them and then playing them the week after yourself. So that it used to allow you to get really close. And I think the Cop End there at Central Park was a special experience for anyone who went there and watched the games.
So you mentioned then you played for Ince as well after you moved from Hindley. So when did you first realise that rugby league was going to be your future career? When did you know you was going to make it as professional?
It was pretty late on, really. I went to Ince St Williams at the time, and at that period in time, they only ran a team to under 13s as it was, and then at under 13s you split, and you either went over the canal to Wigan St Pat's, or you stayed at Introse Bridge. They were just forming at the time a junior teams, and majority of my team went over to St Pat's, and that's where my granddad lived. It was just across the canal, so it was a 5-minute walk for training. So it was easy for me to come up, to catch the bus to my granddad's from school, and then go to training. And at the weekends it was easy as well. So ended up playing at St Pat's. Pretty successful team. Later on at 15s and 16s, and I think at 16s there were out of our squad, majority of that team at the time went to academies. I think we had like 13 players out of our whole squad. Went there. We had a couple of clubs that had folded and merged with us, and out of that squad there was me and a couple other guys who didn't end up going to any of the academy teams at the time. That probably shows how strong the team was. That you've got 13 players who go to an academy, and I was the starting halfback, and I didn't end up at an academy, so we had people who were subs for us who went to academies. So that was probably a little bit disappointing for myself at the time as a 15, 16-year-old having aspirations of making it full-time and being in the pro game, not going anywhere, and seeing all your best mates who you've grown up with going off to Wigan and Warrington and St Helens. And that was pretty disappointing. So following that year, then I moved to, it was under 18s. So you went from 16s to under 18s. I was a under 17, basically at the time playing under 18s. I was made captain of that team, which had probably something coming through most of the junior teams, I'd either been vice captain or captain at the time. So I was captain of the under-17, and then probably halfway through that year, I was unfortunate that I split my kneecap in half, and it went into two pieces. Playing against Leigh Miners, actually, on Leigh Miners field, just went into a tackle, bang knees. Thought, that's pretty sore. That's don't feel right. They managed to take me off the field, and back in those days, the medical standards probably not the best. They strapped it up for me, and asked me to try and run it off. So I was trying to run up and down the sideline and hobble along, and it just, at the end, I just went, listen, this is too painful. This is not right. I went to the hospital. They checked it and said to me, it's really swelled. Can you bend your knee? I was like, honestly, I can't bend it. I'm in so much pain. And I remember the nurse at the time. She went, I've seen knees twice this size bent. She went, I'm going on holiday this week. She went, I don't want to hurt my back by trying to bend your knee. And I was like, listen, I can't bend it. So they strapped it up and said, just go away for 4 days. If it's no better in 4 days, come back. And luckily, in those 4 days, I was in a lot of pain, but luckily I made the right decision just to lie on the couch for 4 days. I didn't move at all. They didn't tell me not to move. Didn't give me any crutches. And on the Thursday, we went back to the hospital, waiting for the X-ray. There's like you do, you go to the X-rays. There's 5 or 6 other people there. We were the first ones in, got X-ray. Everyone else had been in. Everyone else had then got their X-rays and disappeared. And they came back out to me and said, right, we need you to come back in again. So I went to stand up. They went, no, don't stand up. We're going to get someone to come and carry you. So then they come and picked me up and carried me, took me back into the X-ray room. And, on the X-ray, the kneecap had split in two. They ended putting me in a plaster from my ankle up to my groin for 12 weeks, putting me on crutches. And they said, I'd been really lucky that I'd stayed off my feet for the 4 days. Otherwise, if the kneecap had moved and they'd have pinned it, I probably wouldn't have ever played rugby again. So, that was probably a first major setback for me. So I missed the rest of that year, came back the following year. Probably struggled a little bit coming back from it. You didn't have physio at the time then. You kind of left your own devices from the NHS, and probably against bench recommendations came back a bit too early as well, eager to come back. So ended up playing the under-18s that year, made it to the Lancashire Biola team, and missed out going on the Great Britain tour to New Zealand, didn't get picked for that. And from that point, you kind of just resigned to thinking, I'm never really going to make it. I'd also that year played first team in the Open Age at St Pat's as a youngster. That was a eye-opening experience. I remember playing second team. I think our first game was away at Crossfields. We turned up, and Crossfields were basically made up of all the bouncers from Warrington. And I remember getting the ball and beating a couple of people. And then the next time I got the ball, someone got hold of me and whispered a few verbals in my ear that I weren't allowed to beat him and run past him. And the next time I did it, it was going to give me a good hiding. So that was a good experience for me. And I moved from the second team to the first team, played a few games there. And like I said, that was probably at that point I was thinking the dream of being professional or full time was going away from me. But there'd been a few scouts from Wigan down, and in at that time in the academy you could have professionals playing, you could have semi-professionals and amateurs playing as well. And I got invited to go down to Wigan and play in a couple of trial games there in the pre-season, and played the trial games. They were impressed with what they saw. I started the first 3 academy games, and after 3 academy games, they offered me a contract. I signed that contract, and within probably 2 or 3 weeks of signing that, I'd moved into the A team and was playing reserves at Wigan. And a bit of a whirlwind, and probably a lesson for people. At the age of 15, 16, a lot of those guys who had gone to pro clubs were not either playing or they weren't as far advanced as what I am. And you keep working hard and you get your rewards. So yeah, it was probably then when I went to Wigan that I thought, it's not too bad. This I can live up to this standard. And I enjoyed a couple of good years in the reserves till probably injury and misfortune struck again a little bit, and then I headed over to Leigh and made my debut over at Leigh, and probably the place that I call home from now on.
So we'll go into detail about that just in a second, but you mentioned your kneecap and about how you split in two. As a halfback, how much did that injury help shape what kind of halfback you became after that?
Yeah, it was I was probably, again, I was a bit of a manufactured halfback growing up. Probably weren't the most skillful, but had enough skill. Weren't the best kicker, but could kick a ball. Weren't physically the biggest, but I was always fit and probably had a good mentality. And I remember coaches always saying it's to me. Probably sometimes I was a bit too brave for my own good playing halfback. I need to be a little bit smarter and in what I'm doing in terms of. I like tackling. I like getting involved in the tackle, and I like to hit people who were bigger than me, and I probably come out on the wrong end of that a few times as well. But yeah, as you grow up, you come a little bit wiser and smarter, and you learn to use players around you and put yourselves in the right position, and probably find places to hide yourselves when you need a little bit of breather, because playing as a halfback, you need good energy. You need to be vocal. You need to organise your team and get it around the park, because ultimately, if your game plan's not being carried out, or you're not getting the right places, that comes back down to you, and that's your responsibility. So, that was probably something coming from it, and then breaking my kneecap. Obviously stuck 12 weeks, not been able to do a lot. I remember at that time I was okay spin passing from right to left, but from left to right, I struggled a little bit, and that was something in that period I learned how to do from, just sat on the couch, first of all, with just a ball in the hand, just spinning it up, just spinning it constantly, and then getting used to doing it with two hands. And, I suppose the lesson from there is, if you're short or you've got a deficiency in your game and you've got enough time to work on it, no matter how small it is, just keep working on it and that skill will get better.
And you mentioned as well playing for Wigan St Pat's, which is probably one of the most famous amateur clubs in the north of England. Why do you think that St Pat's has produced so many of the players that it has gone on to produce, who have starred in Super League and other leagues around the world as well?
Yeah, it is. It's got a lot of history to it. I think the landscape's changed a little bit now in amateur rugby league. So when I was coming through, St Pat's was one of the biggest, if not the biggest club, in Wigan. You didn't have too many clubs at that time. So, St Jude's were knocking around, but they were in the lower leagues. Oral St James's were a little bit of nomads. They were moving from base to base, but that was pretty much it at the time. I think Springview were there as well, and Rosebridge. So, you didn't really have that many options to go to. So I think, a lot of players ended up just migrating there, and it had a good reputation. And obviously, when you have a good reputation and the more people come through and go to the pro game, the more it attracts people. So, I think that's probably at that time, that's why it was so successful. But, there's a lot of good people down there, and they have a lot of good coaches and systems in place. And, the facilities at the time, I remember, we're going back, 25 years now. There was a club that had a brand new changing rooms. It had its own clubhouse. It had a full-size first team pitch with floodlights on and all parameters around it. It had a second team pitch with floodlights. It had its own all-weather training pitch with floodlights. So, facilities as well at that time were probably exceptional for an amateur club. So I think, there's a lot of key things in there. But I think what's pleasing now is you're seeing a lot more clubs around them starting to grow as clubs and improve on all those and produce their own players as well. And the talent's getting spread around the amateur clubs. And it's good to see now in Super League, you're seeing players probably from not traditional heartlands and traditional clubs. They're coming from different places now, being involved and getting through, which is, is only better for our sport.
And as a Wigan fan as well, how special was it to sign a contract and call Wigan your club for the time that you did?
Yeah, it was at the time. I remember I used to, said before, we used to walk down towards Central Park. So when you came through Scholes, there was a dip down to where the Tesco's is now. You used to walk down there and you could see Central Park at the bottom and you could see all the fans. And I remember the first time going as a player, really having real excitement and butterflies in my stomach. And, every time we went, you used to get there. And you've got to remember at that time, Wigan were fantastic. The first team, they were full of stars. Sean Edwards, Twigger Myler, Martin O'Fire, all those players were there. And for someone who'd been a supporter to get so close to people who you held in such high esteem and were your heroes, growing up, was absolutely fantastic. And I enjoyed my time there. I didn't quite make it to first grade, but I made plenty of friends and plenty of memories and loved every minute of it.
So you mentioned then you started mainly reserve grade for Wigan and you moved across the borough, so to speak, to join Leigh Rugby. How did that move to Leigh come about? When did you first learn that Leigh were interested in signing you?
Yeah, it was a bit of a different one. When I signed, I was 18 when I signed at Wigan, and when they signed me, I remember the directors at the time saying to me that you're probably a little bit old for what we signed as a junior player. And at that time, the club ran a full-time academy apprentice scheme. So I went on that as an 18-year-old. I'd already been to college for 2 years. You ended up then going to Wigan and Leigh College and getting good at dodging lessons and playing paintball and things like that. At that time, we probably weren't fully committed to our education. And it got to a point probably where I didn't think I was quite getting anything from that. I was progressing nicely on the field and going all right, and then I got a double hernia offer. A double hernia came up, and at the time I weren't enjoying what I was doing at college, so I decided to go back working part time with my dad and just to fulfill my day a little bit better and look at something different. And at that time, the coaches all changed at Wigan as well. So the coaching setup changed, and I kind of became a bit of an hot potato. So they had the academy guys who were full time. You had the first team who were full time, and the reserves were either split from academy or first team. So 95% of those players were full time. So I was kind of left in with nowhere to train at nights. I remember a couple of times going back down, joining Wigan St Pat's Open Age, joining them to keep fit. And obviously I'd had an hernia operation, so the coaches hadn't seen me play. And then when I was back fit, they weren't picking me because probably I weren't around as much, and there were other players there. Then an opportunity came to go over to Sheffield, which at the time I thought was a fantastic chance for me to go and play over and be involved in the first team squad. But unbeknown to me, Wigan were asking for a transfer fee for me for some reason. Yet they weren't playing me. I weren't playing anywhere. A team wanted me to go. They weren't paying me that much money, but yet they wanted a transfer, and that deal broke down, which was disappointing. And again, I was just twiddling my thumbs a little bit in between, and my brother had followed a similar path. He'd been over at Wigan St Pat's, and then he'd gone over to Leigh and joined the academy at Leigh and played through the academy system there, and moved into first team and done well. And it just got to a point where I went into Wigan and I just asked them for a release. Said, listen, it's not working out for both parties. I'm not playing, and I'm working. I feel like I'm not in between it. I want a release. So then they granted me a release, which 4 or 5 weeks ago, they wanted a transfer fee from me and probably stopped me moving over to Sheffield. And now they were willing to let me go on a free. And, Keith Latham was the coach at Leigh at that time. My brother was still there. And, I just remember saying to my brother, I went, can you arrange a meeting for me at Leigh? And I went and met him and just said, listen, I've sorted a release out from Wigan. I just want to play rugby. Is there any interest? And they said, yeah, definitely. We're interested. And at the time, they were talking about taking Dave Whittle on loan as well. They asked about money, and I said, listen, money's not an interest to me. I just want to get back playing rugby. And I signed on there for the rest of that year. Not on a fantastic money. It was only probably a couple of thousand, I think it were at the time. And I just wanted to play rugby, and that's how I started at Leigh, and how the journey at Leigh started.
So what was your first memories of going in and seeing Hilton Park as the ground was at Leigh at that point? What were your earliest memories of the Hilton Park ground?
Yeah, I remember going in at the old stand for one of the first training sessions, and you go underneath, and they had the old changing rooms, and Deggs, the old kit man, used to have his stable door, and they had some boots behind it, and they still had the bath, and it was a bit of a, I suppose it was a bit of an eye opener going in. Like this is an old ground, but it was a ground that soon became home, and a ground I loved playing at, and like I said, the old grounds were absolutely fantastic. So that was probably from the ground side of things, and then I remember going training, and training was a real eye opener at the time. The team weren't doing particularly well. We used to split our sessions when I first joined from running a little bit on Green Hill, training on the field a little bit, and then going down to Eccles on the track there. And that was probably one of the first sessions. And I remember me and Dave had gone, and a few weeks before us, obviously Paul Wingfield was there, and Anthony Murray, who'd played in, the academies at Warrington, and Alan Adcroft, Saf Patel, who I played with at Lancashire Academy, they were there. I remember we were doing a few laps, and Tim Street still to this day brings it up. So I think we're doing 400. So the first one, eager to impress. First training session is set off. So me and Dave are at the front. We're flying round. We're probably about 50, 60 metres in front of everyone. We'd done the first couple of laps, and then I remember Timmy just pulling me a little bit, and he says, in Timmy language, and again, colourful language, let's say, he said to me, "What do you think you're doing?" He said, "We're at Leigh." We said, "We don't do that anymore. We don't run like that." And that was my first introduction to Timmy, and the guys were impressed that we'd gone there to set a standard and train at our standard. But I think over the few weeks I was there that year and the months it grew. I hope I earned the respect of people, and they knew it weren't just a show off or a one off. That's how I trained. I trained full on, and I did everything to the best of my ability, because I needed to do that to make sure I played well on a weekend and on a Sunday.
You mentioned Timmy Street, then how much we hear all the stories, but someone who played with him, how much of a character was Timmy?
Oh, he was a character, and he was fantastic to play with. As probably at that time I was 21 coming through, and Timmy was touching 30 or just past it. He was everything that everyone says. He dodged where he could dodge at training, but yet on game day, he had a unique ability to play big minutes and play. He was a tough player. He led from the front. He was a character. You knew he always had your back. He had some skill as well. I've read some reports. Maybe it was things off the field had gone a bit different for him, and he was born and played in a different era. He'd gone on to greater things. He certainly had the full skill set to him, but it was great for us. He was the father figure who looked after us on the field, and then when we went off the field, he tried to be the same age as us. So on the field he was 30, and then off the field he was 21. So he was a great character. He's a good friend, and still to this day. We all get up from that, we meet up from that group, and the banter's never changed, and it's still the same jokes. And it's like we've never been away from each other. And he was fantastic to play with.
And you mentioned as well, your brother was one who instigated a meeting for you to go to Leigh. What was it like being on the same team as your brother professionally?
Yeah, it was good. Growing up, my brother probably only came into the game later on. He didn't take the game seriously. He was more football, and probably ended up playing down at St Pat's just because I were there and some of his schoolmates were there, and he filtered in, didn't really do anything at a junior level, and ended up playing in the third team at the time at St Pat's, and then second team, and moving to the first team. And I know he was known for a goal kicker, but he was never a goal kicker coming through. It was just one of those days someone went, "Oh, we need a goal kicker," and I went, "Yeah, I'll kick." And I think he kicked about 8 from 10 that day, and 6 of them off a touchline, and that's where his goal kicking started. And so growing up, we never really got a chance to play junior rugby together. I remember, at the time I went playing open age at St Pat's, and he was there, and we played a couple of games together there, and we looked pretty similar. And I remember playing a game over at Charlie Burr at the time, and I'd come in and give someone a crack in a tackle early on, just to make sure I weren't getting bullied in the game. And I was a 17-year-old playing open age, and a few tackles later on, my brothers took the ball in, and someone's giving him a bit of a niggle on the floor, and I run past laughing because I heard the guy saying, "No, that's for that cheap shot you gave me before." And as I was running past, my brother went, "That weren't me, that was the other one." And I got away with it. So I played once or twice with him at amateur, and then I was fortunate when I got to Leigh. Again, to play a couple of games with him. His career at that time was probably coming to an end. He joined the police and was struggling in between it. So we didn't play too many games together, but it's always nice to play a game with your family.
And you mentioned then you made your first team debut. Do you remember who it was against?
I think it was up at Swinton, at Gig Lane at the time there when they played there. I came off the bench and played in that game, and I think I actually came on at hooker for a spell as well during that game. And then as the season went on, I moved around a little bit from centre to playing halfback, and we, as I said before, at the time the team weren't doing pretty well. There were some big scores against us, and probably looking a little bit doom and gloom. But we had a couple of memorable games against Hull KR. I remember that was being a real good game for us, and unfortunately towards the end of the year, I think Keith lost his job and Norman took over, and became the end of that season. A lot of that squad left, and Ian Millward came in and changed the place, and things started to look up.
So you mentioned Keith Latham, the coach who brought you to Leigh, lost his job, and Norman Tilley came in. How disappointed was you at first to see Keith lose his job?
Yeah, it's always disappointing that you respect someone who's give you an opportunity to play rugby and put you in the team. I suppose you always have a bond with that person who gives you that opportunity. And being a young player at the time, it is disappointing, but you're a bit blasé to it all. It's you just turn up and train and play, and it's only when you get older and probably a bit more experienced that you understand the pitfalls of coaching and the effect it has on it. But that's the sport as well. Not every coach keeps his job all the time, and sometimes he's going to get moved on. And as a player, you've got to adjust to that and adapt to it, and move on yourself, because ultimately you still want to be in that team. So it was disappointing for Keith at the time to go. And I'm sure he'd done a lot of hard work behind the scenes, but the club had started to move in a different direction.
And what was your thoughts on working under Norman as well? What was he like as a coach?
Norman was great. Everyone who knows Norman, he's a fantastic character. A real funny guy, and got a lot of knowledge about the game and been around the game for a long time. So, I think at the time when Norman took over, he changed a few things and got us to pass the ball around a little bit more and enjoy it and open a bit more, flair type of rugby. And then Norman, he enjoyed a couple of good years as assistant coach to Ian Millward and Paul Terzis as well.
So you mentioned Ian Millward came in at the end of that season, someone coming over from Australia to manage the club. What was your first thoughts on hearing that Ian Millward was going to be coaching Leigh for the next season?
Yeah, it was, no one actually knew who he was. No one had seen him. Everyone thought he was taller than what he was as well when he came over. He's only a little guy. He's always stood on steps for his 40s. But we were a young group. Majority of the team the year before had been let go, and probably one of Ian's jobs was to overhaul the group. And we had a lot of local young players who roughly all signed around about the same time and coming back from Super League clubs. James Arkwright, Paul Wingfield, Anthony Murray, all those types. Dave Whittle joined in, Andy Grundy, and then I think the good thing that we did is we rejuvenated the squad. So we got a lot of players around the same age, and we got some good experienced players in there. So obviously Timmy Street was kept on. Andy Fairclough came back. He was doing a good job, and we had a good group of people around the same age. We like doing the same things. We hung out together. We had a good unity, and we enjoyed it. And I've said before, no one really knew much about Ian Millward. And I remember it was kind of like a breath of fresh air for everyone. This guy came in and all of a sudden he was teaching us how to catch a ball and pass a ball, and which shoulder to tackle with and which foot to put forward. And every day for probably the first 6 months was like a new learning experience. And everyone at the club at the time were like sponges, and we just thrived on it and enjoyed it. And we had lots of training sessions in between the old stand at the back and B&Q. We were doing pre-season on there on the tarmac and stuff, but it was a great time. He brought a lot of confidence in. He upskilled us all. He brought some good overseas players in. Heath Cruikshank and Jamie Kennedy came in as well. And things just from that pre-season just started to click. And as a group, we just had this belief in ourselves that we could win games and improve. And that season was a real good year for us.
And you mentioned then like the likes of Paul Wingfield, and who's gone on to be a successful coach in the amateur game. Could you tell with players like Paul and players like Paul Anderson as well, who played at St Helens and came to Leigh at that time, could you tell they was always destined to be coaches?
No, you'd probably say the opposite. I think coaching, there's certain players who you say like, they're methodical, they will be coached, and there's others who just kind of fall into it as they mature and grow. But you want to say at that age or at that point in their careers that both of those two they've gone on to be coaches and being good coaches as well. So it just shows, as a player, when you get involved with good coaches and you are a sponge and you take everything off them, that as you mature as well, your outlook on life changes, your outlook on the sport changes, and it's always nice to give back to the sport as well. And those guys have gone on to do great jobs.
What was it like then? What was your highlights of the first full season under Ian Millward? Is there any games or any memories that stand out for you during his first season in charge?
I just think the whole season as a whole was fantastic. There was lots of good games in there. I remember we were given a license to throw the ball around. We played with energy. And I think every time we played at home on a Sunday and we had a win, and we went up Leigh and we went in the Leigh Arms after it. That was packed to the rafters. That was the highlight. That's what Sunday was all about for me back then. It was. You worked during the week, you trained hard, you rocked up and did a session on a Saturday, and then Sunday you give everything you got. You enjoyed yourself on the field, and we certainly enjoyed ourselves off the field on a Sunday night. And that's what the town of Leigh was all about there, and that's probably my lasting memory.
And obviously during your playing career at Leigh, you got made captain as well. When did you first hear that you was going to be made captain of Leigh Rugby?
Yeah, I think a little bit through the Ian Millward's first season through 99. There was a couple of spells where I've been captain, vice captain, and then officially with Paul Terzis in 2000. And again, I just think that comes from I've always been a person who at training, if I'm going to train, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. I'm going to try and do everything I can. I was always quite vocal on the field and tried to do the right thing, and had the respect of people around me as well. I treated everyone fair, whether that was on the field or off the field, and I think that's probably what they saw within me as a leader, and gave me a fantastic opportunity to captain a great club like Leigh.
Obviously, Ian Millward going on to Super League in St Helens, was there always a feeling with that squad that he was going to be a Super League coach in the future?
Yeah, I think at the time we always thought, we had that opportunity as a group to, to get there. The first year we'd gone from basically being in the bottom four to finishing in the top four and just missing out on the playoffs in his first year. And then, the second year he was there, we'd started really, really well. And, I think that was the year we were thinking, this is the year we're going to actually win it and go up. And then obviously things at St Helens weren't working out at the time, and a vacancy came up, and they came in for Ian, which was a bit of a shock. And I think his last game, I remember at the time, I'd been struggling with a shoulder injury a little bit that year, which ultimately finished my career. And I think the game was away at Charlie, and I shouldn't have played really, but I knew it was his last game, and I wanted to play in that game, so I ended up playing. And we won the game quite convincingly. And after that, he moved on to St Helens, and Paul Terzis came in, and we kind of carried on good form that year. So yeah, it was. You always knew he was a good coach. We always thought it was going to be with our group that we got to Super League, but he took his chance and made the most of it as well.
So you mentioned then Paul Terzis replacing Ian Millward. Was there much difference between Paul and Ian as what type of coaches they were?
In style of coaching, probably not major differences. They both come from the same club and background over in Australia. The St George Illawarra club. They're both involved in that, so they had a lot of similar personalities. In terms of rugby wise, in terms of probably personality, they were complete opposite. Basil was little general, little bit fiery and fire up at people, and I'd put you on the spot in video, and probably had that presence about him that people were a little bit scared of some of those video sessions and doing things wrong. Where when Turk came in, he was a bit more easygoing and a bit more. He had a little bit of a radical side to him. So he had some ideas that were a little bit out there probably at the time and a bit far-fetched. And, it was, that was probably the biggest difference. He was a bit more relaxed than what Basil was. But, again, he managed to get the group, to buy into his ideas and work towards what he wanted to do. And, I think they were, for me, looking back now, as a coach, they were both fantastic for me as a player and a coach, because I learned so much off both of them, and they were both so knowledgeable about the game.
Kind of got to ask as well, do you know where the nickname Basil came from Ian Millward? That's been something I've always been wanting to ask someone.
I'm not sure. I don't know whether it comes from Basil Brush or not. A little. I think that's where it comes from. But everyone just called him Basil, and that was it. It's like a lot of nicknames. People actually don't know where the nickname come from. They just probably get called that one day, and then it sticks, and everyone just knows him from that name from that day on. And
obviously, as well, in 2000, someone who you would go on to have a close link with in your second spell at Leigh as a coach, Mickey Iron, starts developing as a player. Could you tell with Mickey, when he was a young player, what kind of career he would have in future?
Yeah, you could always tell. He came through. It was a live wire in the academy, and the academies used to play before the Sunday games back then. You used to watch those games, and he was one person who always stood out, and he had that personality and that character about him as well. When he came up to the first team, he fit in straight away. He fitted into the group, and for such a young player to come in and challenge what was an established hooker and a good hooker at the time in Anthony Murray, he came in and challenged him and pushed for a spot there. You could always tell he had those qualities, and it was part of our job to look after him as well as the young kids. So we used to make sure, on Sundays, I said before, we used to play Sunday. It was a great game, get a great win. And then you used to have to meet back at the ground and go up Leigh. So we used to make sure we brought him out with us, Mickey, at that time, and took him out for the night out as well, and look after him and make sure he got home in the taxi as well. So from a young age, he's always excelled on the rugby field, and he's always had the club at his heart as well.
So we can't go without 2000, unfortunately, mentioning that disappointing day at Dewsbury. Just how gutted of a feeling was that defeat to Dewsbury?
Yeah, that was probably the what could have been the high point turned into the low point. It was a real disappointing day for us. Just one or two things didn't quite go our way that day. We just didn't click in a couple of areas, and we'd played them a couple of weeks before and basically tore them apart. And whether we were a little bit overconfident in that going into that game, I don't know. But credit to Dewsbury, they stood up, and they had some experienced players in their team who stood up that day and controlled the game, and it was really disappointing. And it's it's something you look back at. It's a fond memory, but a memory you'd like to have gone the other way.
So then, obviously, that season finishes, and you mentioned earlier with Ian Millward, you had a shoulder injury, which you wanted to play through with the last game, which you said cost you your career. How did it come about that shoulder injury did end up finishing your career?
Yeah, well, that 2000 was probably the last full year I actually played. Playing rugby towards halfway through that year. I had a shoulder complaint. Constant stingers. I'd go into to make a tackle, and I get pins and needles all down in my neck and in my shoulder, and down my arm. And the first couple of times it happens, it's quite frightening. But as the games went on, you kind of got used to that. Within 5 or 6 minutes, that numbness and that feeling would go away. And probably looking back now, it's a little bit stupid to carry on playing. I used to have to play with painkilling injections in the shoulder, and it started off with one and then went to two, and then I was having towards the back end 3, 4 sometimes, having them back in at half time just to get through the game. So I got through that year, even though I weren't probably fully fit. I managed to get through the games, and then at the end of that year, I went in for an operation. I had some issues with the AC joint. I had that, shaven and fixed. I was pinching on a little bit of a nerve as well. I did the rehab, came back from that into 2001, and early on in one of the games coming back, I remember going into a tackle and things just didn't quite feel right in the shoulder, and the pain kind of come back, but it was a slight of a different pain. So I stepped back for a couple of weeks, rehabbed it again, tried to come back from that. Remember coming back into another game, and just the shoulder just didn't feel right, in contact. The pain was coming back. So I ended up going back to the specialist, and I'd actually snapped the bicep off the shoulder. So where it attaches at the top, I'd snapped it off. So I went back in for another operation again to get that fixed up, to get it reattached. But it's like anything back then, the surgeons probably, and the technology wasn't as good. The physio and rehab wasn't as good. And I came back from that game, and probably missed most of 2001, missed most of that year. Got to 2002, had a decent pre-season. Thought finally it's over with. And I remember we were playing Sims Cross at Widnes in the Challenge Cup, and I still don't know to this day. They did a dropout. We had a scrum on halfway. I'd kicked it over for Neil Turley, and they kicked the ball dead. There was a dropout. They dropped it out. I let the ball bounce for some reason, then caught it. And by that time, I'd landed on my front, and the defenders just landed on top of me. And I remember I'd landed with a ball just under the shoulder, and the guys landed on top of me, and my shoulder got forced right back again. And just from that moment on, I just knew, that something's not right in my shoulder. And I remember going off. I had to go off after that. I remember sat in the away changing rooms, and it's kind of reality was, I remember tears in my eyes, and I kind of knew that the shoulder just couldn't hack it anymore, and that were it. So I tried to come back again from that. Really, really struggled. Ended up actually playing a game for the reserves up at Whitehaven and scoring 6 tries. Basically I was finished, and Paul Tursis was saying, listen, you can't play, it's not up to it. And the reserves were short. I think they only had 12 men. I was like, listen, I think I can still play. He's like, no, you need to think about what you're doing. I went, well, let me play tomorrow over at Whitehaven. He went, no, you've not done any contact. You can't play. I said, well, if I do contact, can I play? He went, yeah, but you can't. You've not done any. And Dave Whittle were there at the time. And I said, right. I said, Tux, I went, stand in that window. And I went out on a piece of grass outside of Leigh East, and I got Dave to run at me. And he ran at me like first time, so I tackled him, put him on the ground, and he was in the window and shaking his head, saying that you're not tackled proper. This went on for about 4 or 5 tackles, and in the end, I got Dave to come at me, and I just jumped up and whacked him round the head. I shotted him, and we went inside. I said, right, Tux, I've done everything you said. I've tackled him 8 times now. Ask him, the contact's been good, can I play tomorrow? And he went, right, you can play tomorrow. So I ended up playing at Whitehaven in a game. Probably got away with it, didn't do many tackles, but scored a few tries, and that was basically my last game. I just could never quite get back to playing anything like that I wanted to, and the shoulder was never quite right, and probably a little bit of my own fault in persisting playing with it, and a bit of unfortunate and unluck. And obviously then Ian Millward was over at St Helens and knew that I was struggling, and kind of been talking about finishing playing altogether. I hadn't announced I'd finished playing. I was still officially contracted, but I weren't playing there. I've been doing a little bit with coaching with the academy with Darren Abrams, and doing a bit in the community. And he just rang me up one day and said, there might be an opportunity to get into coaching at St Helens if you fancy it. And that's how I got into coaching. I went over and had a chat, and from that day, I've been coaching, and I think next year I go into 20 years full-time coaching.
So you just mentioned Benny and Millward got in touch with you after that as well. Was it for you when Ian did get in that initial contact and say, I want you to help out coaching at St Helens?
Yeah, it was like, it came as a shock, if I'll be honest. I was working part-time at Body Image Gym. Terry had looked after me there, had done a lot of, sponsorship at the club at the time. So I was working there part-time, and, then kind of knowing your career was coming to an end. And I've been doing, like I said, kind of fell into coaching, doing a bit with the academy and the community just to keep myself busy. And he rang me up and just said, there's an opportunity. And, at the time, all the sports analysis had just started to come over from Australia. And I remember going up on a Friday night, drove up, went into the office at Knowsley Road, was Ian Millward and a guy called Wayne, a New Zealand guy, and they had the Apple Mac out, and they showed me, this software. I had no idea what it was. I'd never done anything like that. I'd done no courses on it or no experience. They showed me the software and they said, "Do you think you could do it?" I went, "Yeah." I said, "Give me over the weekend, and if I could take it home, I reckon I could learn it." So that was it. And it turned out they turned around to me and said, "Well, if you think you can do it, you can come on a 3-month trial." So over that weekend, I took it home. I had to play around with it. I had a thought about what I wanted to do. I had a chat with my partner. I enjoyed working at the gym, but I love rugby, and I was missing that involvement from not playing. And I decided from then to back myself on a 3-month trial and go and start at St Helens and see where it went to. And in then days it was they worked out on Knowsley Road, so it was kind of a bit of a floating role. I'd go in at 7 a.m. and do some bits on laptops for Ian and cut games up and do some bits with the players, then help out with training with the first team during the day. And then at night I'd help out with the academy and the reserves, and I'd come home about 8:30 and 9 o'clock at night. So it was a bit of an eye opener to me in terms of hours, but I loved every minute of it. And like I said, that was the start of my coaching, and I'm still here.
What was it like then when you're still quite young as well? So you retired quite early, so you were still quite young. What was it like going into Knowsley Road and seeing the likes of Kieran Cunningham's, Sean Long's, Chris Joynt's, again, Mickey Iam joined St Helens at that time as well? What's it like seeing them players and thinking, I'm going to be helping coaching you?
Yeah, it was a bit daunting at first. I was the same age as Kieran and Longy, so I'd played junior rugby with them. I played with Longy over at Wigan in the reserve, so I knew those guys. I knew Scully. He'd played at our age for a few years as well. So, and then obviously Mickey was there, who I'd play with. So that I had some familiar faces, but it was quite a daunting prospect going in, thinking, well, you're a guy who's 23 years of age, 22, 23. You've never played in Super League. You've never won any trophies. Then all of a sudden you're coming in coaching, and you're talking to internationals, people who've won grand finals, Challenge Cups. People who've been professional for 15 years. It was a daunting thing, but something that I kind of rose to the challenge, and I never tried to overimpose myself. I tried to earn the respect by working hard and doing the right thing by the people there. And I think that personality and them traits, that's what stood me in good stead. And I quickly soon earned the respect of people around me, the coaches and players, and a lot of those people I still talk to today. And I had some fantastic memories of that first year going into St Helens. Your first year of coaching, you end up at a grand final and winning a grand final. It was like, this is absolutely fantastic. And I hope coaching's like this for the rest of my career. Which as the years go by, you find out it's not. But that first year at Saints was superb, and the coaching staff who were there shaped probably my career as a coach. Ian Millward and John Sharp had big influences on me. And then the players who were there as well, they were world-class players at that time. And it was a pleasure to be around the club, and, it's a fantastic club as well.
So you mentioned then, obviously, as well, about Saints winning the grand final. What's the main difference, so when you go into training at a club like Leigh in Division 1, as it was known at that time, to going straight to a club at the top of Super League? What do you notice are the main differences in the training?
I think obviously there was a physical side of things. The physical presence of the players. Like Chris Joynt, Paul Newlove, and the people at that time. Kieron Cunningham. They were big, athletic human beings. But just how they trained. Regardless of, and I think particularly that group and any group that you see being successful and winning, they probably have the same traits, that no matter what's going on around them or what they've done the day before or sometimes the night before, when they come to train, and training was full on. The skill level was exceptional, and there were a lot of characters as well, and people who had good ideas on the game, and they weren't afraid to say what they thought as well. But they never took anything personal. It was all about the team getting better and the team improving every single day and not wasting training. I think that was the biggest thing, that was particularly with that first group. They came in and trained, and if they were training was full on, and they got everything out of training.
And then the 2002 grand final, against Bradford, who at the time were as close to Saints were probably the two best teams in Super League, and some could argue maybe in the world at that point. What was it? Your memories like going on the coach and going to Old Trafford that day and stepping out and seeing that stadium and knowing that you've helped a part of St Helens getting there?
Yeah, it was fantastic. Obviously I'd come halfway through that year, so I'd only, still in the background and not had a major influence on what was happening on the field. But, I'd found my feet in there, I'd built relationships, and, I remember it's first time getting fitted for a suit, and, you go to finally get that suit, and that's the suit you wear for the next 3 years when you go to weddings and everything. So it was like, this is fantastic. I've got a tailored suit. This is really good here. I've never had one of these before. And then the atmosphere at the game was superb. And it's probably one thing, you learn from your experiences. And if there's one thing I was probably disappointed in myself was, because I'd gone through halfway through that year, and even though I'd felt a part of that group, and they won the trophy and it was fantastic, I didn't feel like I belonged on the podium with them celebrating the trophy. I was still a little bit, stood in the background. And that's probably something to this day I regret, getting involved and getting that opportunity, because, it was my first year into professional coaching, and you're straight through to a grand final, and you're thinking, this coaching's easy. This is, you're going to be in these finals every single year. This is going to be great. So, I don't have to savour this one. But I think, a lesson you learn is every final you've got to savour, because they always say there's another one round the corner, or there's another one next year. But, there's the chances of actually getting to them are very, very slim. And that, that's something, I regret doing. And I remember in 2004, when we got an opportunity to the Challenge Cup final at Cardiff, the players went up and got the trophy, and there was a few of the staff there. And I remember saying to them, I said, "Come on, guys, we're getting on here. We're going lifting the trophy." And they said, "Well, what do you mean?" I went, "Listen," I said, "I've been here before and I missed lifting it." I went, "We will never get this chance again to get on and lift a trophy, lift the Challenge Cup on stadium." I said, "We're on TV, the cameras are here." I went, "Make everything of this moment." And, and that's a lesson from that night I've always took on board and tried to pass on to anyone. That, those opportunities are rare, and when you get that opportunity, make sure you make the most of it.
I've got to ask as well, I think the talking point of that final was Chris jointing that voluntary tackle at the end. As someone in the stands watching that, how nervous were you that the referee was going to blow up and give a penalty to Bradford?
Yeah, it was. You're getting towards the end of the game. Long you kick the drop goal, and you're thinking, right, we've got this now, and we've done the hard work. And then you're watching the game, and I remember at the time thinking, what are you doing? You're not tackled. You're not tackled. And I think probably from another referee or another year, they might have give something different. But I think ultimately it didn't affect the game. The game was won by then, and I always remember a quote by Jointy that year, and I think we took Saints were obviously known for their attacking flair, and I think Bradford had come out and said, defensively we weren't the best team. And I always remember Chris when he got the trophy after, he went, people said we couldn't defend, but we've just defended, winning a trophy there. And, it was a great end to the game, and, another talking point, that people still talk about today.
And so the end of that season comes, and you mentioned it was your first year at Saints. You had your 3-month trial. Was there any talk of you maybe not being at Saints next year? Or was there always the option of you staying on for that extra year in 2003?
No, I'd done. I'd started the 3-month trial that had passed, and before the end of the 3-month trial, I'd signed a contract, a 2-year contract. So, again, you probably don't realise it at the time, but I must have made, firstly, the right impressions on Ian Millward when he coached me to, have a regard to give me an opportunity in coaching, in particular, a Super League coach, at a Super League club as well. So I must have made the right impression on him. And then when I'd gone to St Helens, made the right impression on people around me. And then the following year, I got appointed to head coach of the academy as well, for the under-18s. And, just steadily doing, working my way up the ladder and taking as much information in as I can and helping people, in every way I could, whether that was a young player or an old player, doing the right thing. And, I had a number of years at St Helens, and I said before, some good coaches and some good influences on me.
So you mentioned in 2003. What was the main differences in going into pre-season as a player and going into pre-season as a coach?
I think any coach will tell you it's the planning and preparation that goes into it. That's the obvious one. The behind the scenes, the looking at recruitment. Things are not as straightforward. Obviously, we just won a challenge a grand final, but then your recruitments, you're gauged on your overseas players, when who's staying, who's going, on salary cap, young players, upgrades in contracts. All these things have a big effect on your cap. So that was probably my first foray into that side of coaching. What goes on behind the scenes, and the planning of the pre-season. And pre-season is massive. You speak to any club, if you get your pre-season right, you're going to give yourself the best opportunity to have a good season. If you get that bit wrong and your recruitment wrong, it's always going to put pressure on you during the season. So that was my first eye opener into it. That season was, from what I can remember, was an all right season, but not a fantastic season for St Helens. And that was probably one of the things you learn at it's clubs like St Helens. It's not about getting to finals; it's about winning trophies. Just getting to a final and being a league leader is not good enough. For some clubs that's absolutely fantastic, and not many clubs get an opportunity. But your real big clubs, it's about getting to finals and winning trophies. That ultimately what it's all about. 2003 we didn't quite do that, and then we moved on to 2004, and we ended up winning the Challenge Cup, which again was a fantastic experience.
And you mentioned then head coach of the academy as well at that point. Was there anyone who was in the academy you thought he was a really good player, he was going to make it?
Yeah, there was. At that time, still eligible for academy was James Graham. I'd had some coaching with him the year before in the reserves, and James was excelling then, so he spent most of his time in the reserves anyway. Coming through in the academy, I had a young kid called James Roby, and probably through that year in 2004, I moved on to coaching Lancashire Academy as well. And James, I'd had him in the academy, and he was a halfback at the time. And was a lot of the traits you see now he had now. He had back then. He was very fit. He was courageous. But probably again, it wasn't over skilled in as a halfback, but was very, very brave, and made a decision playing for Lancashire to move him to the hooking position. And from that day on, he just his career took off. He played a bit of 13 and 9, and when he went into 9, he just found his niche, and he worked on aspects of his game, his passing game and stuff like that, and his decision making. He's worked on that over the years, and he was probably the standout of that academy. But again, a good lesson for everyone. He wasn't the superstar in that age group. He was just a guy who every day turned up, worked hard, and backed himself, and physically got himself in the best state he could, and give himself an opportunity, and then took it with both hands.
And you mentioned James Graham as well. Then I think there's rumours circulating he's probably coming back to St Helens, maybe finishing his career. When you look at how he's done in Australia, are you surprised at the longevity he's had in the NRL, considering what English players tend to last over there?
No, I think anyone who's worked with James, he's always had a desire to win, and I think that comes across in him. His desire to win's stronger than anything else. He was a fit guy, but probably if you ask him, he was never the fittest, but mentally he was the fittest. His ability to push through pain, to push through when he was tired, to have that aggression, determination to win. He's had that since he was a young kid, and he's gone over there and he's carried those traits through over the last few years, and he's been absolutely fantastic over in the NRL. And I think just for him, from a personal point of view, if he does get the opportunity to go back to St Helens and finish his career where it all started for him, in front of his family, and that would be a great way for him to end up his career, because he's been absolutely fantastic. He's been a great ambassador for St Helens, the British game, and rugby league in general, and he's been one of the superstars of the game.
And in 2004 Challenge Cup final, what's the main differences between the setup on the day of the grand final and the setup of the day of the Challenge Cup final?
There's quite a few, really. And still to this day, the grand finals are a little bit different. So obviously, the biggest difference is location. So you're at Manchester for the grand final. It's an evening kickoff. Most clubs don't tend to go into a hotel. Some do. We've done it a couple of times. Sometimes we've not. The night before, because you're only within 30 minutes travelling distance. When you get there, it's pitch black. The weather's usually not great. You get ushered into the stadium underneath, so you don't see many fans until you go out for warm up. So there's slight variations in there, and then the build up's a little bit quicker as well, because you generally play the semi-final the week before, so it's a quick turnaround. So you play your semi-final, but we're going into the game. We're getting ready to go to a grand final, so everything's pretty hectic that week, and we're straight into it. Where the prestige around the Challenge Cups, it's a bit more drawn out, and because your semi-finals usually a few weeks before the final is, so you have time to prepare for it. And he said, you get a chance to usually get a suit made up, so you're having all your suit measured for and getting all those different things in. If you're lucky enough, you get one for the grand final. But that week for the Challenge Cups, it's a full build up. It's a full week's preparation. You're coming, and the game before, it's a bit tough because it's always on the back of your mind. So the week before, you're playing a league game, but then the week after, I've got a chance to be at Wembley. So that plays on you a little bit. But the week lead up to Challenge Cup's a brilliant week. The media's building, the stuff you do around the town's building. You can see the banners. People are starting to put into the windows. You tend to have a breakfast with the fans, or breakfast with your family before you go down to Wembley a couple of days before. Then you travel down to the coach. You're 4 hours on a coach, and then you have a training base. You have a couple of training sessions down there, and then you have your stadium visit, and then the game. You get to the game. Usually it's a nice day, so the build up. You see all the fans going in, so the build up's exceptional. And I always remember that we were unlucky at the time that Wembley was being rebuilt, and the final we went to was at Cardiff. So again, it was a little bit different for us. But I always remember going to the training sessions. We had all when the Saints go marching in. Every time we got on the coach, we played it just for a couple of minutes, and that kind of became our theme tune for that weekend. But it's a fantastic occasion. The atmosphere is brilliant, and something I cherish to this day.
And what's your thoughts on the actual stadium as well in Cardiff? Millennium Stadium, used mainly for rugby union, but like you said, at that point was used for FA Cup and Challenge Cup finals. What was your thoughts on that stadium in Wales?
Yeah, I loved it. It was a great stadium. The atmosphere was really good. I think the one thing that the stadium in Cardiff has is it's right in the centre. I remember that night. Normally your 45, 50 minutes coach drive to wherever your hotel is you're staying that night. But we actually stayed in the hotel across from the stadium. So as the game finished, the changing rooms is, everyone's shattered when it all settles down a little bit. But we managed to, grab a beer, and all we did is walk across the road to our hotel to meet our families and friends. And, I think that's the good thing. The stadium's fantastic itself, but the location as well, I think, is really, really good. I think all the fans enjoy it as well when they go there. It's a real party atmosphere outside. And I said, those games and those places are special moments for you.
So you've become a Super League and Challenge Cup winning coach for St Helens, and then Huddersfield Giants will eventually become your next club. How did the coaching move to Huddersfield come about?
Well, I mentioned before about the coaches when I start shaping my career. So when I started at St Helens, John Sharp was assistant coach. In 2004, I think it was, he went over to Huddersfield as head coach. And I kept in touch with him. It was, great for me as a coach, a good mentor, and I learned a lot off him. And then 2005, the season again didn't particularly get off to a good start for St Helens, and ultimately ended up in Ian Millward losing his position as head coach. So just before that period had happened, John had been speaking to me about going over as assistant coach at Huddersfield. Dave Rotherham was the official assistant coach at Saints at the time, and I was still there, probably mixing a few roles up, doing reserves, assistant coach, doing first team. So I had a lot of roles, and this was an opportunity to go to another Super League club with a great coach who was building on, trying to improve a club there. who probably not done fantastic in the last couple of years to, really nail down one role, which was just to be an assistant coach. So I'd already agreed to go over to Huddersfield before Ian had lost his job. And then, obviously once Ian lost his job, Daniel Anderson came in and did a great job at Saints. But at the end of that year, I moved over to Huddersfield Giants.
And what was your memories of the facilities at Huddersfield? Obviously, it's a modern stadium again, be McAlpine or Galfarm, whatever name it's called now. But what was your memories on that stadium at Huddersfield?
The stadium's, was fantastic. Really, a large stadium, and it's probably too big for the fan base. But the facilities are, fantastic. The playing surface is brilliant. So that side of things were superb. Where the club was way behind everyone else was in the training facilities. At the time, we were like nomads, so we had a coaching office at the stadium. We were based behind the sticks. Then the physio was based in another area of the stadium. And then we had a gym we used, which was about 5 minutes in your car behind a car sales garage. We used to pull up and jump into this gym. And then we used to get back in our cars and drive down Leeds Road. We were jumping on fields at Leeds Road or wherever we could get. They were all muddy. So, even though the stadium was fantastic, the training facilities were way behind in, from a place I'd just left. Even St Helens at the time had just moved. We'd been over to we'd moved to Ruskin Drive at the time, so we'd had a gym, video rooms, physio, training pitches, all weather pitches, all those things were all in one place. And all of a sudden, you were going to somewhere, and it was like, as these really the training facilities of a Super League club. But those training facilities, they. Credit to the players at the time. They didn't whinge too much about it. They just got on with it, and over the years, the club have been able to improve those facilities.
So, what was the highlights of your first spell as assistant coach at Huddersfield?
The group we had was we're not being rude to the players there. They weren't the most glamorous players, but they were a hard-working group of players. They were a group of toilers and battlers, and we got everything out of that group. I think probably the two highlights of that beating Leeds in the semi-final at Bradford when no one gives a chance. We're the real underdogs there. We went to that to that game and we performed extremely well and managed to get through to the final. And it was again, I was just unlucky that the game was at Twickenham that year. It seemed I weren't destined to get to Wembley, and we ended up playing the old team St Helens at Twickenham in 2006, and we'd done fantastically well to get there. But unfortunately, on the day, Saints were just too good. The Saints team that year were absolutely, they were phenomenal. They were fantastic. But that was a highlight of that first spell at Huddersfield.
I've got to ask, when you mentioned that team at Saints in 2006 under Daniel Anderson, treble winners, was there any hint of regret then leaving Saints in that year to go to Huddersfield?
Yeah, I think that there always is. You look at Daniel as a coach, and I'd probably worked the back half of the year with him at Saints, so I knew he was a great coach, and I knew the club were desperate for success again, and they were going to invest in the squad. They were investing off the field as well. There were things in place going there, and it's, I suppose, there's a little bit of regret that you weren't involved in that. But then, I look from a coaching point of view, and I'd only probably really been at that top level as a coach, and enjoyed the trappings that come at being at a top club. In terms of the players you work with and facilities, and then to go over to Huddersfield, I think again for me it was a great learning experience, and take some personal pride in getting through to that final, because in years to come, when I went back to Huddersfield Giants, that was probably the first step in that club improving and starting to push towards winning things and being a force within Super League.
So you mentioned then obviously you worked with Daniel Anderson at the back end of his spell. What was the feeling like when Saints offered you a chance to go back and work as assistant to Daniel Anderson?
Actually, I didn't get to work with Daniel, so I went to Huddersfield in 2006, 7 and 8. End of 2008, that's when Daniel left. So Mick Potter was coming in then. So I'd always kept in touch with Mike Rush. It's a club that I didn't leave on bad terms, at all. I chose to leave. I'd done a lot of good things there, and it was a club that was close to home as well. I hadn't moved over to Huddersfield. I still lived in Leigh, so I was travelling. And then the opportunity, I was coming off contract at Huddersfield, and Saints and Mike Rush, we kept in touch, and they offered me an opportunity to come back as assistant coach with Mick Potter, which was a no-brainer, really. Mick had done a fantastic job over at Catalans. You were going back to a club that you knew had a good playing roster, had good facilities, and was a good club. So, it was something I snatched and took with both hands.
And what was Mick Potter like, obviously, to work with? We see him, we saw him impressing you. He seemed like a quiet, down-to-earth guy. Was he the same as a coach as well?
Yeah, he was a bit different, was Potts. I got on with him really well. I don't think every player at Saints got on with him. He was quiet, but he was intense. He was very focused on what he was doing. Rugby-wise, he loved his rugby, and he loved talking about rugby. But once you got him away from that, he kind of relaxed, and he was a fun guy to be around, and a great character. He loved playing tennis. That little story. So he's really intense in everything he does, and if he's doing it proper. So we went playing tennis at David Lloyd's at Kirby. So it was me and Mick against Matt Daniels and Mike Rush playing doubles, and I found it, and Matt found it quite funny that we keep bringing Rushy up to the net and just lobbing it over his head to make him run and see how much we could make him sweat. So I was playing on the same side as Mick, and I could see him getting really frustrated, and he weren't finding it funny, and we were like rolling over laughing. So we ended up finishing the game, and he walked over to me and he says, "We're coming back tomorrow." I went, what do you mean we're coming back tomorrow? He went, "We're going to play these two again this week." He went, "We're coming back tomorrow. I'm going to work on your forehand." I went, "What do you mean?" I said, "We're having a bit of fun." He went, No, we'll come back." So the day after, he said, "Right, meet me at this time." So we went into David Lloyd's and met him, and he had a full, the baskets with all the balls in. And for about 2 hours, he made me just stand at one end of the court, and he was batting balls to me. And I was just working on my forehand and my backhand. And he said, "Right, that's it. We're right now. We'll go back." And he made us go back and play him again a couple of days later. And that's how, there was that side of him. That's how intense he was. But he was a good character, a good coach. And, again, we got through to a couple of finals with Mick there, but just never quite got it over the line. And he went back again to Australia and carried on coaching over there.
And what were your memories as well of the change from Knowsley Road to what is now the Total Wicked Stadium, Langtree Park?
Yeah, again, so obviously Mick left and Royce came in. So that first season with Royce Simmons was a big transition for the club. The old lady had gone, Knowsley Road. A lot of similar qualities to Hilton Park. It looked all right, but when you were there on a daily basis, it was basically falling down around you. But it had a lot of memories. It had a lot of atmosphere. It probably still had a little bit of that fear factor there as well when opposition, teams came and played there. So, but it was time to move on. The corporate side of things is so important for professional sports. So, we spent a year playing out of Widnes, which again was a little bit strange, not having your own stadium and doing there. And then we moved into the new stadium. I remember having a look around the new stadium, the first time, and I'm thinking, well, this stadium's fantastic. This is exactly what St Helens need. This is exactly what the top Super League clubs want. This is the way forward. And it was a great achievement and great vision from Eamon and the people at the club to make sure that dream happened as well.
And you mentioned then Royce Simmons. Obviously, it didn't end well for him at St Helens. What was Royce like as a person to work alongside? How different was he to Mick Potter?
Oh, he was fantastic. Again, we got through to a grand final with a really young squad. We lost a couple of key players through injury towards the back end of that year, and we lost some players in that final, which probably cost us. So we were almost there. I think we had Lomax and Gaskell, Lee Gaskell, Johnny Lomax as our halves, and they were both like 19, 20 playing in the grand final. So, I think if you sit back, it's a great achievement to get there. But again, clubs like St Helens, it's not about getting there; it's about winning it. So, there were some good times there. But Royce was fantastic. I still speak to him to this day. Royce is one of those guys. If you want to go out for a beer, you go out with Royce. He's got a tale about everything. He's got jokes. He's a funny guy. And he's been around rugby league, and he knows a lot of people and a lot of characters, and he was a real pleasure to work with. And I enjoyed every day working with Royce, and obviously he'd worked with Tim Sheens as well, so he had a lot of ideas from Tim Sheens, and Royce was one of those coaches who I thought at the time, I took a lot from him as a coach and as a person as well, and really enjoyed my time with him.
Do you think then, obviously knowing the kind of coach he was and now the achievement of getting to that grand final with the younger squad, do you think it was a bit unfair they didn't get a chance to try and rectify things at Saints? Obviously the start of the season for St Helens was really poor. Do you think if he'd got more chance, do you think he'd have managed to achieve a playoff finish for Saints that year?
Yeah, I think there were no reason why things didn't go particularly well to start off that year. Particularly that Catalan game where they scored on the final looter. The margins are so fine. They can cost you. And I said before, Saints at that time had invested in the squad. Invested in training facilities, invested in a fantastic new stadium. And ultimately, they needed to make sure they were winning on the field and winning trophies. And we weren't doing that at the time, and they made a change. And that's the club's priority. That's what it's the business of sport. If the results aren't reflecting the business plan, then things have got to change. And it's most of the time it's nothing personal. It's a business decision, and I fully understand why they make those decisions.
And in this period as well, a proud moment for you. You get given your first head coach role with England Knights. How did that opportunity first come around for you to coach the Knights?
Yeah, just I got someone rang me up and just asked would I like to be involved. I'd actually done the Canada. I'd been head coach of Canada just before that, when in 2010. That was a bizarre story. They were just starting up over in Canada, and I dropped someone a message one day. Just said, listen, I'm over here at St Helens. If you need any help with anything, just if we can help, we'll help you. About a week later, they come back and said, oh, is there any chance you can send us a kit? I was like, it's a big favour, first one to ask. So we had an old academy kit, the green with a black V on it. We sent that over, and one of the teams in Canada started to play in that, and they had a little bit of a domestic competition going. So I kept in touch, and we done a little bit of sent some coaching things over. And Jamie Lester, who was the coach of Canada at the time, they were going to the Atlantic Cup in Jacksonville, and he'd just got a job as a teacher, so couldn't quite make it. So they asked me would I, Eric Perez, who's been involved with Toronto and Ottawa, he was the guy who was leading it all, and I had some conversations with him, and they got in touch and said, we need a coach for this competition we're going in. Would you be interested? I said, yeah. I said, just pay for my flights there and just put me up somewhere, and I'll come over. So about 3 weeks later, I was on a plane over to Canada. They told me that all the facilities are great. We've got all this equipment. You'll be fine. And when I got there, it was like completely opposite. We had one tackle shield. We had 2 balls. About 4 cones. We were training on an artificial pitch for the first session. The second pitch was, we got there, and I've never seen as many geese in my life on a field. And I said, like, we can't train on it. They went, no, we'll be all right. And they got rid of all these geese, and literally there was goose shit all over this field, and it was all over the ball. But credit to people talk about the people in Canada. These guys were driving 5 hours to train. People don't realise the extent, the passion they've got for the game. They were driving 5 hours to train for an hour, and they all took time off work to get there. So we had a couple of training sessions. I did a little bit of sightseeing. We flew down to Jacksonville. We played in a comp. We had no rugby league players whatsoever. I remember the first session. We were doing a bit of skill session, and the winger ran in with the ball, and I said, right, when I blow my whistle, that'll mean you tackle, so then you can play the ball and we'll carry on. So the winger runs in, I blew the whistle. He put the ball down on the floor, and he just ran off to the wing. I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a bit more difficult than what I thought. And so I had to, pull him in and show him what a play the ball was. But, a fantastic experience for me. We went to Jacksonville, we played a couple of games there. Great experience. So that was my first foray into head coaching. And then I think off the back of that, that's how I got the England Knights job. And, that was, again, a fantastic experience. The quality of players I had was unbelievable. You could almost coach the team with your eyes shut. There were some fantastic players in there, and I had a good couple of years. And We remained unbeaten. We played some good teams as well. We played Scotland and Ireland probably a little bit under strength. We had a real good tussle against Cumbria over at Whitehaven when they flooded the pitch before we got there. And then we had 2 really good wins, against a full French team and a good Samoan team as well. So it was a good experience for me as a head coach to get your teeth into. Great to work with the players involved from all different clubs, and then to have the facilities and what England and the setups all about evolved around as well. That was great to be involved in that.
I'll just touch on Eric Perez as well, as you mentioned him with the Canada. Did you always know, even back then, a decade ago, that he'd be interested in bringing rugby league over to Canada as a full-time sport?
I always knew back then he was bonkers. The man is, he's mad, but his passion, he uses passion for the sport. He'll talk to you all the time, and I remember him saying back then, one day we'll get a team, and we'll get a pro team. If I can get it going in Canada, the Canadians will love it. But you always knew with his drive and his passion that he would follow through with it, and he's backed it up. And not only has he set one team up, but he's setting 2 teams up. So fair play to him, and he's the driving force behind Canada Rugby League.
So after successive England nights as well, another old club comes calling, Huddersfield Giants. Nathan Brown, it's been announced, is going to St Helens. And someone who you had at St Helens as well, Paul Anderson, has become head coach at Huddersfield. When did you first learn off Paul Anderson that he wanted you to be his assistant at Huddersfield?
Yeah, so, obviously, again, I think in coaching, it's a lot of the time you work with people. So I coached Paul at St Helens. He come to Saints and rejuvenated his career and, had a fantastic career there. And then when we'd gone back to Huddersfield as a coach, he was finishing his career. And, I knew a lot of the traits as a person and his knowledge about the game. So at Huddersfield at the time, we were looking for another assistant coach to come in. And I threw his name up to John Sharp, and he came over and joined the coaching staff there at Huddersfield. And when I left to go back to Saints, obviously Paul stayed there and worked with John and Nathan Brown. And then once Royce had moved on, I got released at the same time as well. At that time when Royce got let go, I took the opportunity. I went over to Australia for a bit and spent a bit of time to some clubs in Australia. Went to the Roosters and West Tigers and Penrith, and just seeing how things are ran over in Australia. How the setup, just some different things. So I took a bit of time to do that. And then obviously when Nathan Brown was getting announced to come back to Saints, they were lining Paul Anderson up as head coach, and he'd already been in touch and said, "Listen, I'm going to get the Huddersfield job. I want you to come back over here and help me and support and help us get the club back on track." They'd had probably a really good rise. We'd had Twickenham at Huddersfield in 2006, and then Nathan Brown had managed to take them to a Challenge Cup final as well. And then things weren't working out for him that year. And that happens sometimes. It's doesn't mean you're a good coach or a bad coach. Sometimes just things don't quite click, and it's time to move on. And obviously Nathan moved on to St Helens and had success there, and Paul took over at Huddersfield, and I went in there, and we enjoyed a good period there as well.
Obviously, yeah, we're going to say that was probably the golden point, wasn't it, for Huddersfield in Super League, yours and Paul Anderson's leadership as well. But when you get there, how different were the facilities then to the first time when you coming in 2007? How difficult was it? 2006, sorry. How different was it to 6 years later?
I think the only thing they changed was the paint colour. They had it, and that was always a problem for the club. They hadn't really established themselves as a training base. They were still the coach's office was still in the stadium. The physio was in another part of the stadium. The gym was still behind the car sales room. The training pitches were still down the road there. So they had some good facilities as well. They had access to the indoor training barn down at Leeds Road. That was good, but everything was spread out. And I think that year under Nathan Brown, with some of the players, they kind of used that as a bit of an excuse. We don't have a gym like Saints, or we don't have a training facility like Leeds do, That was our theme for that year. For that year was, what story do you want to create? If you want to find an excuse, you can find an excuse. If you want, we've still got a bench press and a squat machine in our gym, same as everyone else. We've still got a field with grass on it. So if you want to use that as an excuse not to improve and do your best, then you can, or you can make your own story up and improve things. And that was the motto of our season. I'm part of as we knew we had to improve those facilities as well. So we had a real good season that year. We had some real fantastic players. We ended up winning the League Leaders Shield, but behind the scenes as well, we'd managed to. We were looking at other places to train, and Paul just found a place one day on Google Maps. He went, "Come on, we're going looking at this place just down the road. It's just come available." So we jumped in the car, and it was an old textile factory, literally 3 minutes from the stadium. And just as we pulled up, there were nothing in this building. We were looking through the windows, and this guy came over and said, "Can I help you? What are you doing?" We went, "No, we're just looking. We're from Huddersfield Giants. We need a new training base. We're just looking on this place." So he was like, "All right, is it available?" He went, "Well, funnily, it is." He said, "It was a textile museum. Basically, it was a warehouse. The glass front, offices, kitchen downstairs, offices upstairs, glass front, and just a big warehouse." He went, "Yeah, I'm looking to rent it out to a clean business." So, that's from that day, Paul got the ball rolling with the club, and we ended up moving into a new training facility in terms of we had coaching offices where all the coaches were together, with the physio was there, the players had a kitchen, we had a fantastic gym, changing rooms, showers, and so the club, not only did we improve the club off the field, but on the field we're improving as well. So it was a good times at Huddersfield Giants, and what a fantastic achievement winning the League Leaders Shield.
And that's what I was just about to mention. Then that obvious highlight for the club was winning the League Leaders for a team as well like Huddersfield, who, no disrespect to Huddersfield, but we're probably seen as mid to lower table Super League at that point. Probably happy to get in the playoffs. How proud were you then to lead a team to top of the Super League?
Oh, massively. Again, you go back to the first game of that season, and it happened to be against my old team, St Helens, at the new stadium. We're the underdogs going into round one. We're playing St Helens, who've just appointed Nathan Brown, who's the ex-coach of Huddersfield. They're in the stadium. It's all going their way. We went there and we put a fantastic performance on that day, and came away with a great victory. And I think that set the platform for us. Stu Field and Luke O'Donnell that day played extremely well for us, and that set the platform for us for the rest of that year. And it was just a great year for us. And I don't think there was any better sight than at the end of it, when we had the League Leaders Shield, seeing Ken Davies face the amount of time and money he's put into that club, and to give him an opportunity to lift a little bit of silverware, was a lasting memory for me.
I mean, obviously, a team, when they win the League Leaders Shield, it's normally a step closer to Old Trafford. Were you just disappointed in the end that you just couldn't get to Old Trafford in the end after all the hard work you'd done over that previous 8 months beforehand?
Yeah, we were. It's, again, we just fell a little bit short, and you've got to make sure, every day you turn up and do the right things, and we just didn't quite click on that day, and we missed an opportunity. And I think when you speak to players, it's, again, I think some players think, I'll get another opportunity next year and I'll get another opportunity, but you never know how close you're going to get. We were literally 80 minutes away from being at, Old Trafford in a grand final, and you can't go into those games and hold anything back or have any regrets. And I think all of us would love to go back to that opportunity and have another go at trying to get there. And if there's a message anyone can take from this, who's a player, is if you're in a semi-final or a final, don't hold anything back. You've got to give it everything you've got.
I've got to ask as well, that Challenge Cup game against St Helens, your old club, at the stadium in Huddersfield, that Danny Brough dropped goal, did you think that went over that day when it happened?
I think where the kicks have come into it, I definitely thought it went over. The camera angles looked like it went over as well. and probably similar to, we'll probably speak a bit later on, is the Ben Reynolds kick, against Toronto, similar situation. So yeah, it's, and again, that was disappointing. We're so close to coming to and winning that game, and and have it and then you get it taken away from you. It's disappointing, but I suppose from neutral spectators, that's the kind of games that they want to see as well.
So obviously, Huddersfield keep building year on year, still challenging towards the top of Super League. In 2015, I think it is as well, it's the game against the Leeds Rhinos, which as an opposition coach is obviously remembered for Ryan Hall try. But how gutted were you when you saw him intercept that ball and race down the field at the end for that try?
No, it's that whole day was a crazy experience. I remember the helicopters on its way, the helicopters going back. And it's funny, a couple of weeks ago, that highlight was on. I put Sky on and they were playing that exact clip. And I still, to this day, don't know where we got that ball, and it just bounced in front of Scott Griggs. And it was one of those moments like you thought the game's dead and buried. There's no way they're going to score here. Then all of a sudden, from nothing, they pluck a try. And, a fantastic try from their point of view, full length, field. But yeah, from our point of view, it was massively disappointing. And it was, I remember sat in the changing rooms and we're going, have we just lost that game? I can't believe we just lost it. It was total devastation from everyone involved.
And then, did any of that kind of filter into what happened at the start of 2016 with the poor start to the season, do you think?
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of an hangover. And, again, we'd put a lot of into the squad, and recruitment of your squad's important. And the team from 2013 had started to break up. Obviously there was a couple of other little issues going on behind the scenes, but I thought the quality of players that moved out, probably the same quality wasn't brought in. And it takes a bit of time to start putting a new team together, and players are getting older, and probably carrying a couple of injuries. So yeah, there was probably a little bit of an hangover, but I just probably think ultimately we didn't replace the quality that left with the right quality.
And at the start of 2016 as well, there was a surprise in the Championship where Paul Rowley leaves Leigh. And when the bookmakers odds revealed, I think you were second favourite behind Neil Dukes for the job at that point. Was that ever an opportunity that you looked to go for at the start of 2016?
Yeah, it was. There was something that I made contact, and I'd always made it known that I'd love to coach Leigh one day. I said I still live in Leigh to this day, and it's a club. Even though I didn't play many years there, it's a club I've always felt. It's my club. I felt at home there. I managed to captain the club at a young age as well. So it's a club I've always all close to the heart. My son supports the club, and it was something, I was certainly interested in. But I think they'd already at that time when I'd been in touch, they'd already made a decision that Dukesy was going to take over.
But then obviously, when you leave Huddersfield, when Paul Anderson's replaced by Rick Stone, and you unfortunately go with him, you do get the opportunity to come in 2017 to be assistant coach at Leigh. How did that move come about?
Well, obviously, they'd known and had some interest in coming to Leigh anyway. I was available, which always makes it easy. And Leigh were going into Super League. They were looking at bringing someone on the coaching staff who'd been around the Super League and had Super League experience, and it fitted for everyone. I lived around the corner. It was I'd played at the club. They were in Super League, and from my point of view, what a fantastic year to join the club. That year in Championship, they were superb. I remember going to the game against Batley when it was packed to the rafters, and Derek had opened the gates up for everyone to come in. I just thought this is a journey I want to be part of, and if I can help it on its way, then that's what I'll do. But I was just over the moon to be back at the club where where for me it all started really.
I was going to say, then obviously the middle eights was the form then for Leigh to get promoted, including that memorable day against your old club at Huddersfield, where we scored 42 points in the first half. When you heard the final who to go, I don't know if you was there or watching it on TV, but when you heard about final who to go, how proud were you to know that you'd be part of the coach staff of the team you go home in Super League?
Oh, really proud. Obviously I was there that day, watching it. one of the benefits of not being attached at that point was I could go to as many games as I wanted and watch it. So, I watched all the league games. It was what a great moment for everyone, at the club. As for me and probably ex-player and every ex-player involved, what a great achievement for the club to see them go into Super League. But I think probably more for all the people behind the scenes, for over a number of years, there's been a lot of transition at the club, and, a lot of people have put their own money in, Derek and a lot of other people there. And so for everyone involved in the club and the fans and, the spectators, I thought it was a fantastic achievement and, something that everyone will cherish to this day.
And you mentioned then the Batley game. I think there was over 9,000 Leigh fans there. I mean, as obviously a Leigh fan, you was obviously proud to see that. But as a coach, did it let the appetite thinking this is what we can attract to this club if we are successful?
Oh, definitely. And, it's Leigh's always, the town's always backed its club. It's particularly when they're on a run and they're being successful. People turn up and enjoy it. And that just proved that if, given time, given the right, resources and finances, that the people will turn up and watch Leigh. The Super League, how it is now, if it had been this way when Leigh were in Super League, we wouldn't have got relegated. And I think that's what the club needed. Is just a couple of years in Super League to establish itself and put its feet down and and build on it. Everything's, when you get promoted, everything's a little bit of a rush, and the platforms are not quite there, which can lead to it falling down. So I think if the club ever gets the chance again to get back up and establish itself and get a couple of years in Super League, then the fan base will grow as well.
So we get to the start of the 2017 pre-season. Again, different for you. It's not Hilton Park anymore. It's Leigh Sports Village, and we've seen the facilities over at LSV. How impressed were you, first of all, when you saw them facilities for the first time?
Yeah, they're superb. Obviously moving to the stadium's fantastic. I might be biased, but I think it's the best rugby league stadium. I think the atmosphere is great. I think it's the perfect size for probably 90% of clubs. Job on the pitch is to coach at. Never actually played there, but the boys tell me it's fantastic to play on. So that side of it's good, and then what you have around you as well. The grass pitches on the outside. You have swimming pools. You have 3G pitches, floodlight pitches. So all the ingredients are there. They just need a little bit of time to put together. But from a coaching point of view, it does help to make your job a lot easier.
And then league starts off obviously with defeat to Castleford, who did go on to basically storm everyone in Super League until the grand final in Leeds. If it's for one tackle at the end, it looked like we could have won that game. But the game I want to touch on is the game at LSV against St Helens, another one of your former clubs. What was that feeling like on the coaching staff when Mickey dives in front of an North stand in the last minute to win that game?
Oh, it was brilliant. That was, I suppose, kind of a realisation of, we're in Super League and we can compete. I think, everyone was blown away that day by the crowd. I think it was the first game, actually, all the stands had been open. We, as coaches, we stood on the opposite side to the dugouts, and there were all fans in front of us. You could feel the atmosphere, and Saints probably thought they were going to come and have an easy ride against us that day. And we turned up, we performed really well. And for Mickey to, a former Saint, but a guy who's come through the junior system at Leigh to get that try as well and get the victory, it was fantastic for everyone involved.
And then week after as well, in front of the Sky cameras, produce a performance like that against Warrington Wolves as well. That showed just how good of a team Leigh could have been that year, doesn't it?
Yeah, we do. We had, I said before, if the system had been in place, what's in place now, we wouldn't have got relegated, the middle eights. You could say we might not have got promoted, but certainly we wouldn't have got relegated. And there were a few games, certainly we had some great victories that year. And then there were one or two other games where, they bounced the ball or a referee's decision or, a last minute try that, if they'd have gone our way, the results would have been completely different, and we could have stayed up. So certainly we made ourselves competitive. We had a good squad. And I probably don't think that year we got the plaudits we should have got. I look at London last year when they were in Super League, and everyone was saying they're doing a great job. Well, they didn't do as good a job as what we did with that Leigh team that year. It's just the system was different, and we got relegated. So, we rode the roller coaster. We enjoyed it, for a full year, and I'm sure that the club will be back there soon, and I know everyone behind the scenes is working hard to make sure that happens.
And one game that I think was shown on social media because it was an anniversary last week was the 50 points put on the old rivals, Wigan. To be honest, as a Wigan fan when you was growing up, and obviously saying Leigh is your club now, what was that feeling like seeing Leigh put 50 past Wigan?
Oh, it was great. Obviously I grew up as a kid supporting Wigan, and when you move on through your playing career, you kind of stop supporting those clubs a little bit. And I said I follow Leigh now, and played there. My son's there. And, that day was fantastic. The crowd was superb, and that's everyone in Leigh. Everyone you talk to, anyone you meet, they're not really bothered about anything else. If you play Wigan and you beat Wigan, then they're happy and they're proud. And I think we made the town proud that night.
But then, obviously, it ends in the £1 million game. Just before we touch on that, Kieron Cunningham gets brought in, I think, just before the deadline. Were you surprised at all that Derek decided to change from being head of rugby and give that mantle over to Kieron Cunningham?
Yeah, it was. It kind of came out of the blue a little bit. But I understand why Derek did it. Obviously, as a successful business away from rugby as well, and he got to make sure he invests time in both, because if you don't invest the right amount of time in both businesses, then both will suffer. So I understood why he did it. It came as a bit of a shock and a bit out of the blue, and it probably took a little bit of time for everyone at the club to adjust to it and ultimately find out what his role was.
And then we get to the £1 million game against Catalan at LSV, and to be fair, Leeds do start the game well. I mean, in the start of the second half, James Clear goes in the corner to score that try. But then it just felt like penalties killed them off. Like the referee gave penalties. It felt like every single minute before the final hooter went. As someone who was stood on the gantry that day on the east side, what was it like watching that second half unfold?
Yeah, I think that last 20 minutes of that second half was the longest 20 minutes I've ever been involved with. It just seemed to go on for ages, and we didn't get the ball. We were unlucky. I think we kind of run out of steam a little bit towards the back end. We'd lost a few key players. I think the week before we'd lost Mitch Brown and Sammy Soni on the very last play of the game. I think the hooter had gone and an offload had got thrown about, and we'd shifted it and ended up going from one corner to the other. And then the hooter went, and everyone's walking off the field. And I think Sammy Soni's lied down injured at one end of the field, waiting for a physio. Mitch Brown's at the other end, and they were two important players to us. So I think we were unlucky with injuries towards the back end. We just ran out of a couple of players, but ultimately that game, Catalan in the second half just rolled at our middle. They just kept coming. They were constant. And that probably resulted in the number of penalties. They just targeted our middle and kept coming, and we just couldn't get hold of the ball, and we couldn't keep it. And when we did, we probably panicked a little bit, and it was a real disappointing end to the year for us. And I said the last 20 minutes were like the longest 20 minutes in history.
And for yourself as well, was there a worry? Obviously, contracts get torn up, don't they? It's not like football, so to speak. But when a club gets relegated, like a lot of players did leave the club, were you ever worried about your contract at Leigh at that point being torn up?
No, not at that point. I had a probably a different situation. For a coach, the club had just come out of the Championship, gone into Super League, so there were no guarantees of staying in or dropping out. So I'd probably been quite fortunate. I'd signed a 2-year deal either way, whether it was Championship or Super League. So I was quite lucky on that point of it. So from a personal point of view, I weren't particularly worried that everything was going to happen to me. I thought I'd conducted myself well that year, and shown enough that to make sure the club kept faith with me as well.
So then 2018 comes, and Derek does do what Derek does best, and he splashes the cash on a lot of big name players, but for some reason it just didn't seem to click for the first few games of the season. Why do you think? Do you think it's because some players we spoke to said that they weren't fully fit, and obviously injuries do play a part, but do you think a lot of them players kind of underestimated the Championship at first?
Yeah, it was a strange off season. Wasn't really involved in recruitment or retention. I thought a lot of the players we had in Super League, if we'd have kept majority of that squad were certainly more than capable of getting the team back up. So some decisions were made behind the scenes to overhaul the squad for one reason or another. And I think once when you're in Championship and you've been there, it's a certain mentality in a player that you need. They have to have certain qualities, and I probably don't think all the players that were brought in had those qualities, and some probably did underestimate it. Some were coming from the NRL and were played in the second division of English rugby, which it's going to be a walk in the park, and it's not. You're playing against the Championship guys who there's some real tough grounds to go and play on. Some obstacles to get over with there, and some real rough and ready players you're playing against. Guys who are working all day and then just really want to have a crack at you. So I didn't think the mentality of the squad and the players we brought in on a whole was great. We brought some fantastic players in. We brought some players in with the right mentality and attitude as well. But I said I just don't think we quite got things right. And you're always going to be on the back foot when you have such a turnover of players as well to install your systems and get everyone in place and fired. And ultimately that led to a poor start to the season.
First game of the season as well, you said. Eric Perez did tell you he was going to bring a team over, and he does with the Toronto Wolfpack. For the first 10 minutes, though, Leigh, in front of an North stand, start off like a house off fire. And I remember the Leigh fans chanting to Toronto players, "You're just a bunch of rejects." And that kind of had the opposite effect and spurred on the Wolfpack. Do you think that sort of the emotion of that day kind of led to the victory for Toronto in the opening game?
Yeah, I think it did, and I think probably for a lot of our players, that you got to remember that Toronto team had some good players. They weren't just thrown together. They were, they kept a majority of the squad the year before. They recruited probably what was a championship team the year before when they got promoted, and they recruited again and signed some really good players. And I think for a lot of our players, it was a realization that there's some good teams in this competition and some good players. And if you don't go into the game, fully focused, or you don't maintain your intensity and that focus for 80 minutes, then you're going to get beat. And that's what happened on that day for us.
And then obviously defeats against Barrow, who just got promoted from League One, had the win, the sale for them as well. They drew with Toronto the week before. And then I think the turning point obviously was the Toulouse game. So I want to ask you, as someone who worked with Neil Jukes and as close as he did for them year and a half when he was in charge, what was that feeling like when you heard the North stand turning on him and cheering Toulouse on him that game at LSV?
Yeah, it's always, it's disappointing. I fully understand frustrations. Spectators, they demand certain things. And for a club to, and I see where they were coming from. We'd been in Super League, and all of a sudden we'd gone on this massive recruitment drive and brought all these high-profile players in. Then we're getting beat by Barrow. We're getting beat at home by Toulouse when we shouldn't be getting beat. I can understand that, but it's disappointing from a coach point of view to see that. Neil and any coach involved in that situation, he didn't go into that game to lose it. He didn't tell people to throw the ball in touch or knock on or miss tackles. We were fully focused on winning that game. He'd played at the club himself. He'd put a number of years in at the club. He'd put a lot of work in behind the scenes. He'd helped get the club promoted, and it was probably for Neil and his family, it's disappointing to hear that side. You've got to remember what else he's done for the club. But from a fan's point of view, I also fully understand their frustrations, and I suppose it's one of the only ways they can get that anger out and vent it and let the feelings be known as well.
So was you sad then after the Toulouse game when he resigned? I mean, I'm guessing it's a bittersweet moment because obviously Neil's resigned, but then Derek turns to you and says, "Right, you're in charge now."
Yeah, it was bizarre. We'd had a meeting in the morning and first thing, and Derek had been in and addressed everyone, and basically saying, Jukes is our coach. We all got to back him. He's going nowhere. And then within 30 minutes, 40 minutes, we were called back into another meeting, and I think Jukes had met Derek and they'd had a chat and decided to part ways. And that's how it went. We got into this meeting. I remember I was stood at the back, and I still think to this day people think how I was spoken to first of all, and I wasn't. It was basically Derek came in and said, things have not gone right. You know, he was emotional because Neil had done a lot of good things for Derek, and you know, I said before, he worked really hard for the club, and they had a good relationship as well. So it was a hard decision for both parts, but they'd made the decision, and he came in, Derek, and said, you know, basically Neil's gone, and just went, Kieron, you're in charge. And I was stood at the back of the group, and I was like, oh, right, okay. And, you know, and Derek, you know, left the room, and I followed him out, and I went, so am I in charge of everything, you know, where we're at? And he went, yeah, you're in charge. And, you know, that's basically how I got put in charge.
And then obviously, if the first decision that you make as well is to bring a certain Michael Hyam out of retirement to play in a third spell for Leigh, was that an easy decision for you to make, to bring Mickey back into the squad?
Yeah, it was. You know, there were a couple of other things, you know, I made behind the scenes. You know, I weren't happy with, you know, how things were run. You know, and that's the beauty of coaching. We all have our own ideas and philosophies on how we want to coach things, but ultimately, when you're under an head coach, you back him to the hilt and you do what he wants. You can offer your opinions, but it's up to the head coach to take it on. And we'll all do things different. You know, if you're in charge of Leigh, you do things different from what I would, and if I was in charge of this podcast, I might do things different from you. And you know, that's life. That's what makes life interesting. So you know, I changed a couple of things behind the scenes, and you know, one thing, you know, I talked about recruitment. I thought Mickey still had his legs in him, and I still thought he had a lot to offer on the field in terms of his leadership and the quality of what he could do. And you know, ultimately, he's got the club at his heart as well, and we were missing some of those qualities on the field. So it was quite an easy decision. You know, I remember pulling him in and sitting down with him and just saying, "Listen, man, I'm going to ask you a question here. I know what the answer is." And before I even asked him, I could see he was smiling because I think he knew what was coming. I went, "I want you to come back and play." And he went, "Yep, no problem." You know, and that's how the conversation went. And he pulled his boots back on and, you know, and gave us a fantastic lift as well at the same time.
Did he ever mention to you that he was close to signing for Wakefield at that point?
Yeah, you know, obviously I'd known Mick for a number of years and, you know, coached him and we were good friends. And, you know, I knew there were a couple of clubs, you know, I think at that point, he was at the point of, he didn't want to finish playing rugby and he thought, right, I've got an opportunity to go into coaching and, you know, things haven't started really well for us at Leigh and he hadn't really found himself a role at Leigh. And I think his itch to play was still there and, you know, he kept himself fit and his body was feeling good. And I knew he'd been talking to a couple of clubs and that's what made the meeting a bit more urgent because I knew those talks were going on at the time. And I thought, you know, for me as you know, it was an easy win as a coach. You know, your first appointment is you're bringing Mickey Iron back. You know, you can't lose, can you? At least, so you know, it was a straightforward one, and you know, and I was glad to give him an opportunity to get his boots back on and play for Leigh.
And then, obviously, the first game against Halifax is unfortunately a disappointing start for you. And then, again, it's a first disappointing home game to Featherstone, where a certain excellent, you were probably saying about players who maybe knew how to play the championship, and Martin Ridyard definitely was one of them. And I think he showed that day, didn't he, just how much he wanted to show Leigh, how much of an opportunity it was not to have him in that squad for 2018.
Yeah, he did. You know, again, he's a local guy who's played a number of years at the club, and you know, he did a good job. It didn't work out for him for Leigh in Super League, and he went over to Huddersfield and did a good job for them. But you know, if you're talking one of the top three halfbacks in the Championship over the last 10 years, Riddy's up there. You know, he's up there in terms of his ball playing skills and his kicking and his goal kicking. He's certainly up there. And you know, I thought he's just his little bit of extra class that day just got Featherstone through. You know, and got him a win.
And then the Challenge Cup comes around and it's a bit of a break from the league, but then there was a big storm that obviously happened with the weather and everything, and we're drawn away at Batley. Most games are called off, and Leigh one of the only ones that get to play that day. You get to Mount Pleasant, which is always a difficult ground anyway. What was that feeling like when you saw all the snow perked up at the side of Batley, thinking, "Oh God, we got to play on this"?
Oh, it was you know, a different experience. You know, particularly for a lot of our squad. You know, we hadn't gone well. You know, you talked about the defeat at Halifax. I think that was, you know, I'd only been in charge a couple of weeks, but that was one of the low points in my career. You know, that performance. You know, it's not often you as a coach, you say, the players didn't care, but I just got a feeling that day that, there were players on that field that didn't care. And, that performance hit me personally really, really hard. And, I was really disappointed in what we did that day. And, probably coming out of that game, I knew things had to change. So, positional, I give people an opportunity in the first couple of games to change things around here a bit, but I had to start making some major decisions. And, I think moving Pete Matautia to fullback was pivotal in one of those decisions, in getting him there. And, we went to that game at Batley and it was freezing cold. The snow, when we got to the field, was probably 3 foot at the side of the field. They'd been on with a tractor and rolled it, so the field was absolutely full of mud. And everyone will look at that game, and it was a turning point for us. We kind of, the things I've been trying to put in place for the last couple of weeks kind of gelled, and the players started to turn up and believe in each other and work hard. And it weren't a great game. We didn't play particularly well, but the one thing we did well, what we hadn't done in the other games, we'd stuck in it for 80 minutes and we ground a win out. It's a funny story that, we got there, and the overseas guys most of them have never seen snow anywhere, but to play, and it's a totally different experience. And, Pete Matautia was, is the coldest man I've ever seen. He was literally shaking and moving up and down on the bench. He was that cold. And just to prove a point, bubble air conditioner, great character. He was calling them all soft, come on, it's just a bit of snow. He said, I'll tell you what I'll do. He said, I'll do the full, and he was on the bench, by the way, and he did the full game in shorts and T-shirts with no undies on, just to prove a point. That he said a little bit of cold, and all you've got to do is get over it. And, all the boys have got their skins on, they've got tights on, they're still shivering, and Bubbles there in shorts and T-shirts with no undies on, running around for 80 minutes, and that, that day it's a great day for us as a group, because we galvanised, we came together, we got an important win for us, and then from that game, we went into a good run.
You did, and obviously, Leigh, then you started playing what you say was your style of rugby, and there's always one game in that good run that sticks out, and it's away at Sheffield, where you actually create a bit of history by becoming the record holders for a lead in the first half against Sheffield. What do you think just clicked on that day against the Eagles, especially on a 3G pitch like it is at Legacy Park?
Yeah, it was, we'd been working hard, on the training field. We'd upped, our fitness levels. We worked hard on that, and our training, what we were doing, and philosophies, putting them in place. And, we're getting the right people in the right positions as well. I think was key to that. And I think the boys had started to enjoy themselves. The sun was shining, the fast track, suited us that day. And, it was just everything that day. Every time we touched the ball, we just seemed to score. There just seemed to be acres of space on the field. And, at that time, it's a funny old ground when you go to Sheffield, isn't it? So when we went, the coaches were put on the leisure centre behind the sticks. So we were on the roof of the sticks watching it, and it was just one-way traffic. Everything we did was superb. And, we scored a try, and if we wanted to shift off a kick-off, we went straight through and scored again. But I just think that day, the sun was shining. We were all in a positive frame. Our minds were positive in what we were going to do. The conditions suited us, the pitch suited us, and and I think we showed that day what we were capable of.
Yeah, because I think I remember that day we was commentating for ETV. I think you was on the second floor, and I think we had to put us on the top floor, didn't we, to film? Because I think you tried to get us to film from the side for video, and we said, no, we don't have the facilities to film from the side. So I think we were stuck on the floor above you that day. And it didn't really feel like a rugby ground, did it, though, that Legacy Park at Sheffield?
No, it was, it's strange from where we were. It was like you were a spectator. It was like you were on your holidays and you were just leaning over your balcony watching, there's a game going on over there. Because you're quite a distance away from the pitch as well. So, obviously you didn't get the atmosphere. But, we were quite lucky. I think that first half, all the traffic was coming our way.
And then, obviously, Leigh keep building momentum. And a game which I'm sure you're proud of is the cup game against Salford in LSB in front of the Leigh fans and the Sky cameras as well, especially that second half where you keep a Salford team to 0.
Yeah, it was a really good performance. Again, we had time to work with the squad, and we we challenged ourselves to match Salford, and Salford are a good team as well, a good squad. I think it was good for everyone to lock arms with a Super League club and get one over them. I think we were very dominant that day. We looked like we could be a Super League team. If things would go our way and given the right opportunities, and it was a fantastic result for us.
And then I think the day that mathematically, in the end, proved to be the downfall is this summer bash. So we'll touch on a few points from the summer bash now. Leigh starts off very well, and then in the second half again, we start off well. But then what seemed to happen in that last 20 minutes again? It just felt like the last 20 minutes against Toronto seemed to be a bit of a downfall.
Yeah, we it's the old Pete got sin binned, didn't he? Which had an effect on us, and we didn't handle the last 12 minutes or the last 10 minutes with 12 men particularly well. There's a couple of things we should have done better there, and we shouldn't have kicked to our left hand side when we're short of a play. We should have drilled it into touch. There's some game management things there, and but again, we knew it was one of those games from a spectator's point of view. Great game to watch. Had everything in it. We always knew that Toronto were a good team and they were going to have spells in the game, and we just didn't particularly handle the last 20 minutes great, and particularly when Pete was in the bin.
I've got to ask as well. First of all, did you think it was a sin binning for Pete?
No, penalty, yeah, I shot, but I thought the sin binning was harsh, and ultimately I think that's what cost us the game. I thought that decision put us under a lot of pressure defensively, particularly against a team like Toronto who throw the ball around. Then it affects your rotation on your subs and what you've got left and positional changes. And I thought it was a really tough call. Penalty, yeah, but a sin binning too harsh, I thought.
And then I'm going to ask you now about kick from Ben Reynolds. It went over, didn't it?
Yeah, I thought it did. Honest, yeah, I thought it did. And it's you look at football with the goal line technology, what's supposed to be 100% proof, which the other night it proved it weren't. Whether we need something like that in our sport to get it over. It's an interesting fact as well that I think if you look at particularly in rugby union, the height of sticks, the goalposts are very, very high for that reason as well. But I think the original sticks that should have been used that day weren't, and the sticks from Rochdale were used, which are a smaller stick. So if it had a higher height on our sticks, they actually might have given it us and gone over. So it might have come down to which set of sticks we were using.
And then at the end, obviously, from that moment, Toronto were celebrating, but unbeknownst, we see it on these cameras, we're on the other side of the stadium. There seemed to be a bit of a bargee, an argument with the coaching staff at the end of that game. From your memories, what happened at the end of that?
Yeah, I think Rose was a bit jealous about my haircut, if I'm being honest. He was asking which barbers I used. It's a game that's it's played with emotions. There'd been a bit of everyone knew there was a bit of feeling there anyway from the two clubs and from Paul and what was going on. Something was said, and I said something back to stick up for my team, and before I knew it, I was surrounded by about 17 Toronto players, and on my own. So yeah, there were a bit of something and nothing. It probably looked a lot worse than what it was on TV. I spoke to Rose after that, and there's no issues there with us whatsoever. There's no issues with any of the staff. It's just the game's played with passion and emotion, and sometimes it boils over. But I think it's good for the fans to see that it actually means something, and the people involved in it care about it as well.
So then obviously Leigh, but then again start on another good run, and I think you only lose the one game, which is in Canada to Toronto as well. First of all, I've got to ask, what was that experience like travelling? I was there obviously at the point. What was it like from your point of view, that experience with Toronto? Because I remember speaking to you on the day about it, and you told me about the facilities, and I was shocked by how poor the facilities were.
Yeah, it's a different one. Again, I understand finances, but I don't know whether things were done slightly different for us. You've got obviously your flight over. We landed at a hotel or it weren't a hotel. It was a university campus. We weren't really greeted with much welcome there. you give them one meal a day, so they put us in a room. Bearing in mind we've been travelling probably for about 10 hours and not out proper, so we went to a room, and the food wasn't the best. We had a big chocolate gateau cake was part of the food, and cans of 7-Up and cans of Coke and Fanta. We had a bit of pasta there as well, but that was served on a paper plate with plastic forks, and we had no chairs, so we had to eat our first meal there, sat on the floor. Then outside of the campus, you had a 3G pitch, which we weren't allowed to train on. They made us go and travel to a training field, which was about an hour and a half away in traffic, which was, the state of the field was ridiculous. You were given one meal a day. While I was there, the breakfast was, if you'd have got given that breakfast on a holiday, you'd have thrown it back at them. Let's put it that way. It weren't the most nutritionist breakfast. So we had to cope with that, and we ended up booking into another hotel to make sure we had a decent meal. And then we got to the stadium, and it just so happened that it was the hottest day in Canada. I think it was about 42 degrees when we were touching kickoff. It was red hot. There was people outside, spectators fainting. We got in the changing rooms. There were no fan. There were water running down down the walls. The facilities aren't the best, but we didn't perform well enough on the field. We didn't go with a full squad, but yeah, the trip weren't the greatest trip. I think they took some lessons from that as well. I think when they went into the Middle Eights, the facilities improved, and obviously it would have been, actually, when I was at Hull, we'd have been the first team to go over to Toronto in Super League, before lockdown. So it'd have been interesting to go over and see actually, the upgrades on the facilities they've made, and see what it would have been like as well. You've got the journey back as well, don't forget.
Yeah, but didn't you fly the day after as well? Is it?
Yeah, so you play Saturday night. We didn't fly out of Canada till about 9:30 Sunday night. Then we land in Glasgow at 9:30, 10 o'clock Monday, and then we have to jump on a coach and get back to Leigh. So we got back in Leigh about 3 o'clock Monday afternoon. Absolutely exhausted and tired, and not with 2 points as well.
But then Leigh again, well, the form carries on. But then Sheffield at home, and I think it needed London to lose at home to Rochdale, Halifax to lose away at Barrow, and I think there was another one as well. I can't remember who the third team was. Can't remember off the top of my head, but I think at one point Leigh were in the top four, weren't they, during that afternoon? When did you hear the rumblings at the end that they just hadn't quite made it?
Yeah, I think with about 5 minutes to go, the scores were coming through, and we knew we mathematically we couldn't make it. We just probably given ourselves too much to do. The start to the year obviously affected, and then the transition, the first couple of games when I took over, and then you go back to that Toronto game. It's those games. They always talk about inches and opportunities, and those opportunities have gone away from us. So you're never in a good position when you're relying on other people's scores to put you in a good position. You've got to take ownership of your own destiny, and unfortunately we haven't done enough of that over the course of the year. For the full season, and it came back and got us in the end.
How difficult then was that week afterwards when Derek announces that he's probably not going to put any more money into the club, and all the players basically you're going to have to try and find new clubs like the high earners? As a coach, how difficult for you was that week?
Oh, it was crazy. Again, all owners are the same. Their first priority is they've got to protect the business and the club. They've got to make sure that survives, and obviously that was at the forefront of what Derek was doing, making sure that his investments over the years weren't going to go to waste, and that ultimately there was a club going to be in place for the following year. Which you've seen many clubs go under. So that was it was a free for all that week. It was right. Find yourself a club, get out and see what happens. So the phone was ringing, and I think we got the deadline was on a Friday. I think it was. We had a meeting on a Monday. So we had recovery on the Monday. We were supposed to train on the Tuesday. There was no point training on the Tuesday because half the squad were trying to find, or over half the squad were trying to find new clubs. And then eventually on the Thursday, I think it got to a point where financially it was viable to carry on, and a number of players had left by then, and that was it. And it was kind of like, this is what you've got left with now for the rest of the year, which at that point weren't looking too bad as a squad. And fully understood the reasons why everything was done. You know, and what we had left at that point on paper looked, you know, a reasonable squad, but what was going to take its toll over the next couple of weeks, you know, there was still a few more wranglings with contracts going on, and injuries were going to come and get us, and you know, the inability to bring people in, and ultimately led to us, you know, running out of players.
I mean, obviously, the club bring in players like Will Dagger, who's obviously gone on to be successful at OKR. You had the Warren brothers in as well. I've got to ask, just on a personal note, that first game back at LSV, you wouldn't blame many of the fans for not turning up. Really, the Championship Shield isn't really something you'd expect people to be bothered about. But how proud were you of the Leigh fans who turned up and got behind the lads that day?
Oh, it was, you know, it's fantastic, and you know, the atmosphere. One thing, you know, I'll always say is you know, as a player and as a coach, when I've been at Leigh, the spectators to me have absolutely been first class. You know, superb group, mad, passionate, but always been good with me. And you know, that day for them to turn up when basically we were playing for nothing really. You know, that just shows the passion and the commitment. You know, not of only the people behind the scenes, but the fans as well. How much they want the club to succeed, and how much they'll back the club. So you know, it was a fantastic day, and you know, I think everyone thrived on that. You know, that atmosphere, and like I said, we managed to bring some good players in. You know, like Will Dagger, Warren brothers are good players, and I think if we would have kept you know, all our players fit who we had, we'd have probably gone on and actually won that Shield. But you know, when it came to the end, we just run out of bodies.
So obviously, Leigh kind of carry on the form. Really, I think we really lose to Featherstone before that fight. Well, no, we don't. We'll talk about the Dewsbury game now. You lose to Featherstone, get to Dewsbury. I remember turning up that day, and I think someone said to me, "We've not got any subs." I think the Dewsbury person was getting the team sheet. I said, "Just to warn you, you boys haven't got any subs." And I looked at him, like, "Is he like actually being serious here?" You look at the team sheet, and there is no substitutes. As a coach that day, were you surprised that they let the game go ahead, knowing that you've only got 13 bodies? And it ended up for 12, I think, for 70 minutes of that game.
Yeah, it was. You know, it was getting, as every week went by, it was getting harder and harder. You know, we were losing players with injury. We couldn't bring people in. We only had a small squad anyway. You know, and we're basically getting to the point where we were training with 8 players. You know, we're a professional club. We're training with 8 players, and I could see it in the players' faces. You know, particularly like Mickey and people who cared so much about the club. We were trying to do a training session, and it's like you could see in the face. And you know, and it happened going into the Featherstone game, and at one point I just sent the boys home because I think we had 5 fit players to train, and it was like, boys, just, you know, there's no point, just go home. So yeah, it was. You know, it was disappointing. You know, we went to Dewsbury with 13 players. We lost Will Dagger within the first, you know, 8 minutes. And, you know, again, not being rude to those 13, you know, hats off to them for turning up. Some of those players had some things going on behind the scenes with contracts, you know, and payments. You know, that was affecting some of them. They weren't, you know, the best 13 Leigh players ever to pull on a shirt, or the best 13 players we had, but they were the 13 players we had available. We lost Will Dagger after about, you know, 10 minutes. Mickey probably should have come off after about 15 minutes. He got a knock and managed to, you know, hobble through the game. We had no subs. You know, it was a real, from my point of view, who, again, you know, playing for the club, being involved in the club, not just as a coach. It's a real sad day to see the state that we were in that day.
But then, obviously, I think Ryan Bailey as well, another player who was probably, no disrespect to Ryan, at the twilight of his career, wasn't he, by that point at Leigh? But that moment where the fans, again, they don't leave, even though they're getting battered by Dewsbury, which you never thought would happen 2-3 years ago. What was that like at the end, going over to still a 4-way side and knowing that they stuck behind that team no matter what during that day?
Oh, again, it was, you know, it was superb, and it was, you know, something I always made a point of going over to the fans and thanking them, you know, whether we won or lost, you know, because I think they deserve that. You know, they pay the money, and you know, they backed us and supporters, and I think, you know, I think they understood. They, you know, it's a small town, Leigh, so they knew what was going on behind the scenes. You know, they knew we were in great shape, but I don't think you could deny that day. You know, no one didn't try. I think, you know, you look at Jamie Acton and Ryan Bailey, you know, 2 props there generally play 20-minute spells, and they played 80 minutes. You know, Ryan Bailey at his age played 80 minutes. You know, the effort was there. We were just lacking legs and bodies towards the back end of it, and a bit of quality in some positions. But I think the spectators being there, I don't know, we had a special bond, I think, between myself and the players and the fans towards that year. I think from when I took over, it was they always knew that I'd always try and do the best I could by them, and they'd stick by me. And it was a special moment. And that year, even though it finished not in a great way for the club, and that for me personally, it was a year I'll always cherish.
And then the Championship Shield final, you had to borrow players, I think, from Wigan, St Helens. I think Jack O'Neill come from Castleford as well that day. Ultimately, in defeat to Featherstone, who were having problems of their own, they were lending players from Leeds. I think there was talk that I don't think both teams really wanted to play that final at first, did they?
No, it weren't. And that week we trained, we had 5 players. We turned up, we had 5 fit players, and we're going into a final. With 5 players, and we potentially had 9 players, or we had 9 players available for the Sunday. That's all we had from our squad. So we had 5 who could train, we had 4 who couldn't train, but were going to probably be available. And I remember ringing them up and the RFL and saying, "Listen, no one wants to play this game. It's like a meaningless game kind of thing now. It's lost all respect." And Featherstone was struggling with their players. They went, "We've got maximum of 9 players." And they actually turned around and said, "Well, that's the minimum you need to play." And they were literally at that point going to make us play with 9 players. And we're like, "Well, this is just going to be a farce. It's not fair on the fans who are going to pay the money to go there." I said, "We're not trying to kid you or pull wool over anyone's eyes. The most players we've got is 9. We're going to have to literally turn up with 9 players." And that rumbled on for most of that week. And then, I think on the Friday they relaxed the rules and allowed us to get some players in from academies who hadn't played first team. So on the Friday afternoon, we were basically ringing round to try and arrange it. Them guys came and had one training session on Saturday, and then played for us on the Sunday. I think we had about 7 or 8 new guys playing for us, whereas Featherstone had, I think they brought 2 in or 3. So it was always going to be tough for us, and it was just it was disappointing. But again, the fans and the messages after that game from walking around and people wishing well and giving you hugs and things like that. That's the side of coaching that really spurs you on. And I'm not sure, because I've got an affinity with the club, that it was special there. I'm not sure you have that connectivity at other clubs, but certainly at Leigh it was a special moment.
And ultimately, that does become your last game at Leigh as well. I think you was out of contracts for that as well, and Widnes just been relegated from Super League. James Rule gets in touch with you and offers you the Widnes head coach job. How did that come about?
Yeah, it was strange. Obviously, there were a lot of things going on at Leigh. They spoke to me about a contract, which was I hadn't took a penny more for being head coach. I hadn't took any more money. I didn't ask for any more money. They'd offered me, or loosely talked about, a contract which was probably about a third less of what I was on the year before, to stay in. But that was like a brief conversation, and that was it. My contract was a bit different. Most contracts run out in November. Mine ran out in end of October. So I actually went away on holiday and ended up, I'd booked a last minute holiday, went to Turkey, in the same hotel as Riddy. Riddy ends up in the same hotel. Mickey Iams in the next hotel. Dave Rowland from Leigh Miners is in the same hotel. So we're away, in Turkey on holiday. And while I'm away, my contract actually ran out. So I was facing the prospect of coming back off holiday, not having a job, no pay. I hadn't spoke to anyone at that point. I'd heard nothing more from Leigh. I think Derek was away on his holidays. So you're kind of left in limbo with your family and thinking, what's going to happen next? And I was due back on the Sunday. I think the contract ran out on the Thursday. And on the Friday, while I was on holiday, I got a phone. The phone rang, and I don't normally answer it while I'm away. The phone rang, so I answered the phone, and it was Phil Finney from Widnes, and saying, we would be interested in talking to you about head coach. Can you come and meet us tomorrow? I was like, it's a bit difficult, that one. I'm in Turkey at the moment. I said, well, we really need to meet you. I said, well, I'll land back on Sunday. Said, right, can you come and meet us Sunday? I was like, that's going to be a bit of a trip. So we flew like Saturday night. We were on the red eye flight. We landed Manchester early morning. I dropped the family off at 9 o'clock. Had a quick shower and change, jumped in my car, and then went over to meet the guys at Widnes. And I had some discussions with them on the Sunday. On the Tuesday, I had a couple more discussions. Still hadn't heard anything from Leigh at that point, and everything what they was telling me was sounding really good. It was a full-time job. The money was good money. The squad they were recruiting was a good squad. Christian Inu, Harrison Hansen was there. Liam Wood had gone there. Anthony Gelling was come there. The pitch they got, the training facilities was all good. And I had a chat over, and I just thought at that point, I'd had my first year as an head coach, and I just thought that this is, probably my best opportunity at this present time to get back into Super League with a squad what I thought was capable, and plus I had nothing on the table from Leigh, so I took the decision to move over to Widnes and go there, which all started off good, and then the rails fell off.
So obviously you mentioned when it started off good, Harrison Hansen and Liam Wood, former people at Leigh, Anthony Gelling, who's won Super League with Wigan, joined as well. And then all of a sudden there's rumblings of financial difficulties at Widnes, and then all of a sudden it's announced that they actually are in administration. You came out of the frying pan into Leigh, out of the frying pan at Leigh into the fire at Widnes. It felt like, didn't it?
Yeah, it weren't even rumblings. I remember going to a sponsors meal around about Christmas time, and James Rule had stood up and said, the club's in a fantastic position. We've come down from Super League. We've used our parachute payments wisely. We've rejigged the squad. Sponsorship's going really, really, really good. We're going to look to strengthen the squad even further. We need everyone on board. I'm thinking, this is everything that you want. Everything you want to hear. This is what you want to get told. So, we had a good pre-season. We went over to Toulouse, had a fantastic win against Toulouse over there, and then it was on a Tuesday. I was leaving Widnes about 5 o'clock, and I got a phone call, and they just said we've got an issue. I said, all right, what's the issue? We can't pay the players the wages. Can you let them know? I was like, what do you mean? They went, we've got no money. We can't pay them on Thursday, and that was literally all we got to know. And I went, well, I think you need to let everyone know. They went, no, we're gonna send you an email. Can you just put it on the players group and let them all know? I went, well, I think you need to speak to everyone. So, they didn't want to speak to the players. So from that point on, then I had to phone every single player within the squad before I left, and explain to them that we're not going to get paid on Thursday. There's a chance we might get paid on Monday. But if you've got direct, because we had a lot of young players, if you've got direct debits coming out, make sure you can transfer some money over or borrow some money, or just try and speak to those people so you don't get penalised, and try and sort yourself out. So that was the first indication we got. And then on the Friday, basically we got told you're going into administration, and then again, things just get bizarre. We got called into a meeting with all the players. So all the players were there, the staff were there, the admin guys came in. Obviously panic setting in, and the admin guy said, we're from the administration. The club's into administration. It's good and bad news. The game this week's not on, but the good news is we've secured your salaries from the RFL. So all the players are all like cheering and like this, and I'm sat at the side, and I'd already been tipped up by someone to expect a few things who've been through the situation before. So I said, just excuse me, can I just clarify, is that everyone's wage is getting paid? And this guy, obviously, he's an admin, so he doesn't know anyone. He says, who are you? I said, I'm the head coach. Guys on this side of the room, the coaching staff. And he went, you're not getting paid. And I was like, all right, what do you mean we're not getting paid? He went, no, we've only secured the salaries from the RFL for the players. The staff are not getting paid. It's like, right, okay. I said, so what from this point do you want us to do? And he said, right, just, prepare for your game next week, carry on training and do as normal. I went, well, how do you expect that when you're not paying any of the staff? He said, well, that's your decision to make what you do. So, over that weekend, it was, I'd tried to get in touch with the admin and said, listen, I know I'm not getting paid, but I'll do my best to, carry on and get the team ready and move on to the next step. And, that's how things unfolded.
Well, but when we saw the spirit of the Widnes fans, so to speak, with the squad builder, how pleasing was it as a head coach of a club, but you come from a club of great fans at Leigh, to see Widnes fans raise over 100,000 to pay the staff and make sure that that team is secure then?
That's... I don't know if there's any words you can describe what the fans did. There is a rivalry between Widnes and Leigh, and I think it's because their fans are so similar. They're so passionate and care about everything. But what the people of Widnes did to save that club, I can't find any words. You had young children turning up with the pocket money, and people selling things, and just what they did was absolutely fantastic. And again for me, the fans were superb. I think in the end, how I left Widnes, we'll probably speak about that again a bit later on. But why I was there, they were superb with me. They backed me. They backed the club. They saved the club. That's what the people of Widnes did. They made sure that for the next generations of Widnes, that there's a Widnes club there for people to enjoy it. And they rallied round, and the support they showed was absolutely fantastic.
And so Widnes as well produced some good results on the pitch during that time as well. Like you said, you beat Toulouse away, which not many teams actually do in France, and kept building, and it gets to Good Friday. It's your first Good Friday in charge of Widnes against your old club Leigh. You pack out the away end at the Halton Stadium and you turn it on against Leigh. As someone against your old club, what was that feeling like?
Yeah, it's always, the strange games then. There's a lot of pride at stake for those games, It's, I've experienced both sides of it, when you've won that game and when you've lost that game, and when you have to go shopping in Tesco and every Leigh fan's giving it you, it's not the, it's not the nicest thing, but, I remember, when Leigh beat us, at the bash, and I walking my son to school, and the kids were giving it me on the way to school, and even the lollipop man were giving me a bit of stick. All in good banter and jest, but they are special games, them, and I think more than anything, you as a coach, you don't want to lose those games. As much as you want to see Leigh be successful and and go on and win things and ultimately get back in Super League. If you're coming up against them, I don't want to lose. I don't want to lose any game, but those games probably mean a little bit more. And that day I thought we played superb, and we were deservedly the winners. But the next time we played, Leigh got the better of us. But as the season went on, and probably people don't see we went through the administration, but it's the effect behind the scenes, what it had on the club as well. In terms of the rugby. So from when we went into administration, we had 2 full-time physios. We lost both of them. We lost our S&C conditioner. We lost 4 senior players and 2 promising junior players who went over to Leeds, and and every week that went by, we kind of lost something else. So whether that was a player or member or staff, or things like strapping and what things we were used to, supplements, like the coach going to games was like, there's just so many stories you could go on about, but they're the things behind the scenes that people didn't see. So to get some, I think. You talk about proud moments in coaching. I think, for me to get some fantastic wins at Widnes against the teams we did, to make sure we survived when so many other teams have gone in that situation and been relegated, and to get to Wembley, I've got to be really proud of what we did there that year, and we put some smiles back on some people's faces.
And I was just about to mention, when you go back to LSV after the summer bash, it's your first time going there in the new cup competition, the 1895 Cup, a trip at Wembley. And I think a lot of people were probably saying, oh yeah, Leigh are going to win. Leigh they brought Ryan Briley back, Adam Mixon joins the club, Junior Snell joins the club, all with the goal of getting to Wembley. And it's a horrible day, conditions-wise, we're shocking, like the rain and everything, but then in that second half, in front of the South Stand where the Widnes fans are, your team turn on the style. I mean, that try from Anthony going alone was just fantastic. What was that moment like at full time then, when after the administration, after everything we've been through, that you took Widnes Vikings to Wembley?
Yeah, it was, if I go back to the week leading up to it, we had a really good week's preparation, and, it was probably one of the times we actually managed to get all our players fit and on the field. And obviously the added spice of going back to LSV for me, and what was at stake, and even Derek sponsoring the cup. There were a lot of things there to go along. And I thought when we played Leigh in the Bash, we got bullied. That Leigh came out and they bullied us that day, and they got over the top of us, and they deserved to win. And our theme that whole week was we weren't going to let them bully us. Every little battle, every little thing we could try and win, we weren't going to get bullied. And I thought just how we started the game, you saw a little bit of a scuffle. We stood up for ourselves, and I drilled it in all week about we're going to go there. I know what to expect. I've been there. I know what the crowd's going to be like. I know what Leigh's going to be like. I know what they're going to try and do to us. We've got to stand up, and we can't be bullied. We've got to be the bullies. We can't do it. And we prepared really well that week. And we played that way as well. And we had some fantastic players who come up with some great plays and some fantastic skill. And it was a funny one. You go into the game, you're thinking, right, if we lose the game, how are we going to react? And if they win the game, how am I going to react? And I kind of got in my head, like, I don't want to. It's a big game for me, but I don't want to, over-emphasise it if we win, because of, the relationship I had with the crowd and being there and the club and stuff. And it got to, towards the end of the game, I was on the sidelines, and, when the whistle went, and I think just everything came out, and it was like, I was like pumping the air and stuff. And then, saw all our boys running towards the crowd. And it was just, I think, a big sense of relief for us, physically and emotionally for the club to get to Wembley after the year we'd been through. So that was massive. And then, to beat the calibre of team in their own backyard that we beat as well. There were a lot of emotion, a lot of joy that day. And, I remember we did it. And then I remember just going home that night and, physically just being drained and mentally being drained, and just, having a beer and just sitting and smiling to myself and thinking, we've done a good job today.
And then obviously the Wembley game against Sheffield is played after a Challenge Cup final, which surprised a lot of people. I mean, I know you probably have it before, and I think everybody thought that'd be the perfect curtain race for Challenge Cup. But we spoke to Harrison Anson on the show last week, and he said that whole day was just weird, that Wembley day. Did you feel the same as well as the coach?
Yeah, it was. Obviously Sheffield were, had the same day as us. They coped with it better. The result didn't go our way. We got to that stage, I think, at the end of the year where we had too many players who were injured because we had no physio. We had at one point, we had no strapping. We were running out of strapping. Players were strapping themselves. And we got to Wembley, and we probably had too many players who were 100%. But the whole day, they did a survey after it, and I think, they are going to change things. But it was a drawn-out day for us. Even the day before, our viewing at Sheffield landed with a better viewing. Our viewing at Wembley was at R5, so you were allowed. So you had to go to the viewing. We couldn't get out of it because they said we had to go and do the press. They said we could do a captain's run there, but you weren't allowed on the field. I was like, well, how are you supposed to do a captain's run if you're not allowed on the field? And they said, there's a piece of AstroTurf at the side which was 10 metres wide. So we didn't end up like doing a training run that day because we travelled down that day. So that day got dragged out. And then when we got to the stadium, it was, right, are we ready for warm-up? No, it's 10 minutes. Okay, another 10 minutes, boys. Then it was another 10 minutes. And this went on for like an hour. And then basically, I remember them coming to me at 5:20 and saying, or 5:15, saying, what's the shortest time you need for a warm-up? Because you might not get a warm-up. And we're like, well, we need to get out and warm up. So there were lots of to and fro. I said before, Sheffield exactly the same. They played better on the day. Fully deserved the win. But I think the competition the concept of it is superb. Just the makeup of the day and how it's done just needs to change. Just to give it a bit more prestige. And we went out for warm up. The Challenge Cup, Warrington are still getting the trophy and cheering and doing the lap of honour. So the stadium's full. By the time the second half's kicked off, there's 5,000 people in Wembley. There's hardly anyone there. So, the concept's superb. Really well done for us to get in there. Fantastic for Sheffield for winning it. But I think they'll change things and adjust it and make it better.
And obviously, the end of the season, Widnes do survive comfortably. I think if points hadn't been withdrawn, we'd be near the playoffs. Do you look at that as a proud moment? Because I'll use the example of football for recently. Bolton Wanderers went into administration and they kind of relegation just happened for them. Were you kind of proud of how you managed to galvanise a group of players to not only get past the points deduction, but to stay up and finish as comfortably as you did?
Yeah, I am. I set myself a little target. I wanted to, even with the points reduction, I wanted to have enough points that if we had our points reduction back, we'd have got into the playoffs. That ultimately was my goal, what I wanted to do. But I always knew that was going to be tough, and I touched on it before as the year went on. So I didn't really have an assistant coach. We lost our physio, so we didn't have physios. Financially things were getting pulled from us. So strapping some days we were struggling on strapping. Players weren't getting treated. At one point I was having, I was in early at 7:30 speaking to players who weren't going to play because I hadn't picked them. Then I was strapping people. Then I was taking them outside for a fitness run before I actually went back in to do a video to take the team out for training. That's how bad it got at some points. But we always knew that was going to happen. We knew things were going to be affected, and the ultimate goal for the club was to make sure we didn't get relegated, and we did that, and we got through it, and to make sure that finances for the following year were in a reasonable place that the club could continue as well.
So obviously you mentioned earlier about how good the Widnes fans were with you when all the stuff was happening, and you mentioned then about Al maybe leaving probably on a bit of a sour note. What was the reason behind your sudden departure then to go to Hull FC?
It's halfway, well, not halfway through the year, probably 3/4 way through the year. The club, we were in a bit of an hole. There was a lot of disarray. We didn't know which direction we were heading, and I was off contract, and I said spoke to the guys, and I always wanted a 2-year contract. I always thought it was going to take 2 years to rebuild the club, to get the squad and the salary cap back in track and get the players we need. It was a 2-year project. The club weren't willing to do that. They said they were only wanting to do things on a 12-month contract, and I could see from a player's point of view that a lot of players were asking me what were happening. So at that point I was fully focused on, okay, then if that's what you want to go, I'll sign a contract. So I signed a 12-month contract, and within any contract there's clauses. So within my contract there was a release clause. If I give 3 months' notice, I could get out of the contract. So that contract was signed, and we got on with it. There'd been a bit of interest around that time from a couple of clubs, and Hull had been showing a bit of interest about coaching for the year after, but nothing concrete had come through. So I'd fully got my head around that we were staying at Widnes. I enjoyed my time there. I said before, the fans were fantastic. Got to the end of the year, and then there'd been a couple of things behind the scenes back end of the year which I didn't quite agree with, and certain things which always need to stay private. And they talked about the 12-month contract, and they signed a couple of players on 2-year deals, which was a bit thought was a bit strange, but that's the club's priority, to get on with it. And then out of the blue, I was always honest with Widnes. Out the blue, Widnes Hull got in touch and through my agent and said, they've decided what they're doing with their coaching structure, and they're making a couple of changes, and a new role's coming available to coach the head coach of the reserves. They want someone to mentor the junior players and help Radders out and Andy Lass with the first team, and they've identified me as a person they want, and they were offering a 12-month contract, and I just went, listen, I'm thanks for the interest. It's flattering, but I've signed with Widnes, and I'm committed to Widnes. Then, a week later they came back and they offered a 2-year deal. The money was the same as at Widnes, and I went, listen, again, it's a great offer. It's a fantastic club. It's a chance back into Super League for me. I said, but for the sake of 12 months, I'm not gonna rock the boat at Widnes, and I'm here to I'm enjoying being a head coach, and I'm here to build on what we've done. And then they came back again. They offered a 3-year deal this time. It was, right, we're offering you a 3-year deal, and financially, again, some people thought it was a financial decision. It weren't. I've probably actually come out less financially a year than what I would at Widnes, because I've got to travel and pay for accommodation, staying over there. And so they came back with a 3-year deal, and we went back to Widnes and said, is there any chance? My agent spoke to him and said, is there any chance he'll extend his contract to a 2-year deal? Don't want any more money. He's always, security for family. Obviously, I'd gone through a tough patch at Leigh, and then a bad patch at Widnes, and all of a sudden I've got a 3-year contract or a 3-year job offer from a established Super League club, with a chance to go and learn off another coach as well, and basically your money's guaranteed there, not 100%, but pretty much certain that you've got a job for 3 years. And Widnes didn't feel they were in a position to extend it, so I didn't think I was left in any option really, but to exercise the clause and move over to Hull. But again, it's one of those. When I look back, it's the first part of Widnes was we went into administration, so I lost the wages in February, and then I had to claim that back off the government. Some pension monies and different things were never paid, and then the 3 months notice at the end. I had to give the 3 months notice, which I did, which I turned around to the club and said, just pay me for a month and I'll walk away from the other two months. So I did that for the club as well. So if things always don't come out the way they want it to, the club wanted to put the press release out, but I've no hard feelings. I was up front with Widnes. The fans were superb, and you never know, one day I might get a chance to go there again. But certainly it wasn't a financial decision in terms of more money. It was more of an opportunity of guaranteed job for 3 years, and looking after the family and making sure the family's looked after, and an opportunity to get back into Super League and learn as well. I'm a coach who likes to learn, and you're never the finished article, and I thought Hull gave me that opportunity to do that.
And obviously as well, people forget as well, you're still a young coach, aren't you, as well? You're still in your early 40s, which is young in terms of coaching as well. When you look at the facilities at Hull, just how impressed are you when you go? I mean, you see the Kieron Stadium, it can hold 20-odd thousand in every week. Hull have a brilliant fan base, but how impressed are you with the facilities over there in Hull?
Yeah, they're superb. And again, that's you look at things like that, and you want to go into different environments and see how they run. So the playing stadium's superb. We have our own training complex. Coaches' offices in there, changing rooms, showers. We have a gym, video analysis room, S&C room. We have dining facilities. We have a wrestle room. We have 4 grass pitches. They've got towers onto so they can film the sessions, and that's just for the senior setup. Then the junior teams based at Bishop Burton, which is the college there. They've got the full education. They've got 3G pitches, rugby pitches, got their own gym. And then we have another community base as well, what's got an indoor sports hall and rugby pitches and classrooms on it. So, when you're talking about big clubs, Hull FC is a big club with great facilities. We've got, fantastic players. And, again, that was something that was appealing, to the role. What I actually went in originally was from a coaching point of view. It was a fantastic role. You're going in, there's no pressure on you as such, as like there is a head coach. You're in there to help the junior players. You're in there to coach the reserves. You're coaching with the first team players, and then you've got all these facilities at hand as well, and a chance to learn off, what other people do. So, for me, it was the decision to go was a difficult one, but it was made for the long-term future of myself and the family.
And obviously you've got some players who you're familiar with as well. 2 examples, Adam Swift, you've had at England Knights, and Jake Connor, who's obviously kicked on his game from Huddersfield as well. Just how important is it working with some players like that who you can trust, especially as an attacking coach as well?
Yeah, it is. It's always it's always easy to go into an environment where you know people. Obviously, Jordan Johnson came over from Widnes as well. He'd signed there before I got there, so there was some familiar faces. I'd had Danny Houghton and Scott Taylor with the England Knights as well. So you're talking, you've got a good grasp of the group. You've got some guys at the younger end of the squad, and you've got some in the middle and some at the end. So you know where people lie within that squad, and it makes your transition a lot easier.
And obviously, like we touched on at the start, unfortunately, just for the team, it hasn't seemed to click at the start. I just want to get your reaction to what did happen on the end at Sky with Lee Radford. Were you surprised at all by that happening live on Sky, or did you think he'd get told before he made a press release afterwards?
Yeah, I think, obviously, the year before, things hadn't, results hadn't been, been going the right way. And again, I'll come back to the business plan of things. Hull FC is a massive club, and just being in finals is not good enough, or competing. You've got to win games, win trophies. That's the business end, and that's what big clubs are. How it came across on Sky Sports probably came across a lot worse than what it actually was. I know it weren't great, but I think Adam and Radders had been having ongoing conversations. Obviously, when you don't start well, you always, once you've been in the game long enough, you know the signs, and you know that it's never far around the corner that them things are going to happen. Adam had actually spoken to Radders before he'd gone on to Sky, so he hadn't just gone on Sky and said it and then told Radders. So Radders had been informed, and I think even probably now, if you ask Adam, he'd probably do things slightly different. But again, he does things in what he thinks is the best interest of the club, and his heart's always behind the club, and he wants the best for the club. Him and Radders had a really good relationship, and that's how it happens sometimes. As a coach and an owner, your relationship's that tight, and it makes that decision at the end so difficult to follow through when you are so close. So yeah, it didn't come across great on Sky, but it was done. Could have been done differently, but Radders was told before that.
So for yourself, Kieron, now obviously looking at the end of the season, what are the main hopes for both you on the pitch and off the pitch as well?
Well, I think, for the first one is to get back on the pitch. I think that's everyone's main hope. It's been a long time, and, since we went into lockdown, we only had the one training session as coaches to take over. So we've not really had much time on the field. So we're looking forward to getting back on the field, first of all. It's giving our players enough time to get over the injuries. So we've got to make sure when we come back, this period coming back is vital. That, yeah, we've got a lot of catching up to do, but we can't push too hard because we don't want to break players and injure players in training. We've got to make sure we get them on the field. We've got to get results back. Again, we're all judged by our results. We've got to start winning some games. And for our club, we've got to make sure come the back end of the season we're competing. In the big games, and ultimately that's semi-finals and finals. And if we was to win a trophy, that would be the icing on the cake. And that's what every club in Super League, every club who enters the Challenge Cup, they all enter to win a trophy, and we're no different.
And obviously you mentioned then about winning stuff at Hull FC. Would you like to see maybe promotion brought in this year, and maybe no relegation, but see an extra Super League next year, maybe 2 more teams go up from a Championship?
I don't know. It's a difficult one. I think promotion and relegation's good. Obviously we've been through seeing Leigh getting promoted, but also seeing the effects of relegation, how it can affect. If you look at Catalan, when they came in, they had a couple of years' grace to establish themselves as a Super League club, and Widnes got a few years out of that. And I think if that had been granted to Leigh would have been in a lot stronger position now to challenge. Maybe not top 2 in Super League, but would have been pushing around, the top 6. The fan base and the investment what had gone into it to give them an opportunity to get there. So it's a real tough one. This year is difficult with logistics of the teams in France and Toronto not being able to play any home games, then the financial ones. As much as your heart says, yeah, let's promote 2 teams coming up. I think logistically and financially, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye and decisions. It's obviously for next year, if 2 teams say we want to come up and we're going to fully finance ourselves, like Toronto have done, then that's a possibility of a viable proposition. But if they want some money from the Super League coffers when we're already losing money next year, then it makes financial difficulties for everyone. So yeah, I don't know if there's an answer. I wouldn't like to be making that decision. Whichever decision's made, unless there's someone always going to be upset or disgruntled with it. But I think this year's been such a strange year for everyone. We've just got to accept that decision when it's made and do the best out of it we can.
And obviously, I think they're hoping for Super League to start back up later on in the year, but it'll be behind closed doors. How strange a feeling will it be getting ready for a team but having no crowd behind you?
Yeah, it'll be, obviously we've not had a clear indication. We've had some indication when we'll start playing, which is looking mid-August, but nothing concrete. No dates to even go back training yet. So that's going to be strange. And then, there's talk of us playing potentially, out of 2 hubs like they're doing in the NRL, just using 2 stadiums. So it'll be strange. Going out for a warm up and not seeing the crowd. Having a home crowd, either supporting or getting on your backs, that'll be strange as well. So we've got to create our own energy. We've got to make sure it doesn't affect us, and we've got to make sure we stay focused as well, because whichever team's focus is the best on it and doesn't let outside distractions get to them, will come away with the points. But yeah, it'd be an interesting one, and it'd be interesting what Sky do with it as well. With the noise from the crowd. I watched a couple of the football games yesterday, and I watched part of the game with the crowd noise on, which just seemed totally false. And then I ended up flicking over to the other channel and watching it without the noise, which I found was a better atmosphere. And you could hear the players shouting and going, 1-2 on my head, time on, all those types of things. So it'll be interesting what Sky do with it as well.
Well, Kieron, I've got to say these hours have flown by. We've had a really good chat with yourselves over what's been a really good career, not just as a player, but as a coach as well, and produced so many memorable moments. So before we go, as we always do on this Taylor Talks podcast, we'll end on some quick fire questions. I'm not going to promise they'll be easy. So first of all, the best ground that you've played or coached at?
LSV.
Best fans that you've coached under?
I'd say LSV are good, Lee's are good, but Widnes are good as well. I said before, they're very, very similar, and that's why there's a bit of a clash between them. But, both sets of fans are superb.
Who's your best mate in rugby?
Best mate, so I still speak to Paul Anderson a lot. I'm very close with him, text messages, and Ian Talbot, who I've known since I was about 8 years old, who's over coaching at St Helens.
Challenge Cup or Grand Final?
I'd like Challenge Cup at Wembley.
I was just about my next question, then, was Wembley or Old Trafford?
Different, tough one, that one. Different atmospheres, but winning a final at Wembley with a full house as well.
Rugby in the summer or rugby in the winter?
Summer.
And last, pie or lobby? Last question.
Oof, tricky one for me. That brought up on a bit of both now. I'll go lobby. Lobby with a beetroot chaser.
Well, Kieron, thank you very much for taking the time out of your schedule to join us here on the Taylor Talks podcast, and good luck in the rest of the season with Hull.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.